Chapter 14. Ninth level, Sorcerer. Amon's mouth was so wide open that he forgot to close it. He stuttered. He heard clearly that Crazy Ol was talking about sorcerers, not mages. Sorcerers were people who learned magic without the permission of the gods. They would be punished by the shrines. How could he obtain the power of a demigod? That was unbelievable. Crazy Ol stopped talking. His eyes seemed to be looking far away through the wall, as if he was recalling something. After a long while, Amon came back to himself. He asked carefully, "Are you a sorcerer too?" "Yes, I'm a sorcerer. But I'm not as accomplished as my student." "I'm only an 8th level sorcerer," answered Crazy Ol confidently, but he did not turn around to look at Amon. Amon was petrified. He stared at Crazy Ol for a long time before he asked in a low voice, "Your student?" He paused, not knowing how to continue. Crazy Ol seemed to be talking to himself. "His name is Bear. If he hadn't become a god, he would have died a long time ago. The last time I heard from him was 30 years ago, brought by Schrödinger. At that time, he kidnapped Troni, the adoratress of the Temple of Isis, and was being hunted by a large number of mages and warriors. He wanted to come to me, but he couldn't get away. Then there was no more news from him." Amon could not make a sound, as if he was under a magic spell. Crazy Ol's short words contained too much shocking information. First, if the sorcerer hadn't become a god, he would have died a long time ago. Obviously, he was hinting that mortals could become gods. And in all the prophecies, humans could not live forever like gods, let alone sorcerers who were cursed by gods. Second, the message brought by Schrödinger 30 years ago meant that the cat had lived for at least 30 years and could send messages between sorcerers. What a magical cat! Amon recalled his childhood. That greedy and dirty fat cat had been at Crazy Ol's house for as long as he could remember. However, Schrödinger was too lazy. It slept soundly in the corner all day long, and almost no one noticed it. The most shocking thing was that the magician named Baal had abducted the saintess of the Temple of Isis 30 years ago. At this time, Amon still had no idea what kind of person the adoratress was, but he knew that a magician would never be so ostentatious as to cause trouble in the temple. It was as if he did not care about his status at all. Amon stopped talking. Crazy Ol turned around and looked at him. "You can't believe it, can you? He entered the Montefiore temple and accepted the invitation to become the honorary high priest to fulfill my wish. But even I did not expect that he would abduct the adoratress and the gods tear together. How dare he? He's even crazier than me." Amon, who had been petrified, finally sensed something was wrong. No, how could it be? Aren't sorcerers despised by the gods and hunted by the temples? How did he become the honorary high priest of the Montefiore temple? Crazy Ol smiled. It was his most common expression, a sneer of ridicule. "What I just told you about magic and body arts are the ancient sayings on the continent. They are oracles, and they seem to be the truth, but they may contain many mistakes and lies. I taught Baal everything, and I only wanted him to fulfill one wish of mine, which was to find out the real secret of the gods." Amon Ol's brain was not working so well at the moment. He could not think of so many complicated questions. He asked again, "You haven't told me how a sorcerer despised by the gods could become the high priest of the Montefiore temple." Crazy Ol's sneer became more obvious. The saying that only nobles are qualified to learn magic and they have to get permission from the temples is just a lie made up by the priests and priests to monopolize magic. Those who practice magic privately are called sorcerers, and they are not tolerated. If you are just a low-level or middle-level sorcerer, you will be punished or even hunted by the temples. But if you are lucky enough to become a great magician, the situation will change and become very dramatic. What kind of drama? Amon was more and more confused. He had only seen plays praising the gods during festivals in his town. Crazy Ol asked back, "Amon, would you sacrifice a flock of sheep just to kill a beast? What if the beast didn't provoke you and was even willing to help you?" "Of course not, I'm not a fool," Amon said. Crazy Ol snorted, the priests in the temples are not fools either. The cost of killing a supreme sorcerer is too high. To encircle a supreme sorcerer, you have to bear a heavy loss. Who would do this unless they had no other choice? If a supreme sorcerer appears in the territory of a temple, as long as he does not expose himself or make an enemy of the temple, the priests will be happy to pretend that they don't know anything. If he is exposed and has to be dealt with, they will usually use another method first. Amon was beginning to understand, but he still asked, "How do you do it?" Crazy Ol turned his head to the wall again. His eyes seemed to look through the room and into the distance. He told Amon about Baal's past. When a supreme sorcerer appeared in their territory, the smartest way was to eliminate him without losing or even increasing their own power. Then they could negotiate. Persuade and bribe him to join the temple, accept the blessings of the gods, give him a noble identity, and become an honorary priest. In this way, all troubles would be solved, and there would be no need to fight to the death with heavy losses. A supreme mage was a transcendent existence in any place on the continent. Of course, every shrine hoped to have more supreme mages in charge, which was also a symbol of power and status. Even the king secretly approved of such a thing. Who didn't want more supreme mages to serve them? When a sorcerer became a mage, not only did he no longer have to worry about his identity, but he could also enjoy an honorable status. Shrines that could attract supreme mages enjoyed great wealth and resources. Practicing magic and enjoying the reverence of the people here was much better than being a sorcerer who could not see the light of day. So why not? So these negotiations were often easy and pleasant, and both sides were happy. But there were also exceptions. Those who could practice magic in private and reach the highest level were all rare geniuses in the world. Among them, there was no lack of arrogant people who would not accept such an invitation. But as long as he did not openly make an enemy of the temple would promise him benefits or gifts in private, as long as there was no conflict between the two sides. Only in open hostility, when a supreme sorcerer became an enemy of the kingdom and the temple, then he must be eliminated. It would be an extremely tragic battle of annihilation, and even all kinds of forces would be involved. Baal was a student of Crazy Ol Nietzsche. 36 years ago, when he entered Montefiore, he was already an 8th-level supreme sorcerer. He was very straightforward. He went directly to the temple of Isis to show his identity and demonstrated his magical achievements, which surprised the adoratress and the 3 high priests. Then, naturally, Baal became the honorary high priest of the temple of Isis, a respected supreme mage. The Montefiore shrine claimed that Baal had been practicing magic for many years, never caring about the publicity of his reputation. It was not until he became an 8th-level supreme mage that he accepted the title of honorary high priest. How pious, humble, and determined he was. In the beginning, Baal only had the symbolic status of honorary high priest, and did not hold any real power. But 3 years later, the situation changed again. During the period when he was the honorary high priest of the Temple of Isis, his magic advanced to the 9th level, and he became a demigod. At that time, Troni, the adoratress who represented the highest authority of the Temple of Isis, was only at the 8th level. Baal's status not only became extremely honorable in the Temple of Isis, but also became one of the elders of the magic assembly of the Empire of Igut. He was qualified to participate in the discussion of the supreme mysteries of magic, to guide the nobles and priests in their practice of magic, and to consult the historical records in the archives of the Temple of Isis and the magic assembly of the Empire of Igut. These were the reasons why Baal entered the Temple of Isis. It was Crazy Nietzsche who taught him everything. He only hoped that Baal could fulfill one wish, to find out how a god became a god. If he knew this secret, he might be able to answer 2 questions. Could a mortal become a god? If so, how could he become a god? The difficulty of fulfilling this wish was almost beyond imagination. Crazy Ol did not expect Baal to succeed, as long as he tried his best. As far as Crazy Ol knew, Baal might be close to success. Even if he did not answer all the questions, he had at least grasped the key to solving the riddle. Otherwise, he would not have been able to abduct the adoratress of the Temple of Isis. It was the abduction of the adoratress that completely changed Baal's fate. If it had not happened, Baal would have continued to enjoy his prestigious status. Perhaps he would have become one of the greatest mages in the history of the Empire of Igut. Perhaps he would have been able to fulfill Crazy Ole's wish. But the world could not be reconstructed. 30 years ago, Baal left the Temple of Isis. He took not only the adoratress, but also the god's tear that Trony was in charge of. Crazy Ole suddenly said something else. Some people in the know said that it was Baal who abducted the adoratress, but I think the adoratress was abducted voluntarily. She had the god's tear. Even if she could not defeat Baal, she would not be abducted if she was determined to fight. 30 years later, right here, you excavated the god's tear again. Maria will become the new adoratress of the Temple of Isis. They finally have the adoratress again. Amon was shocked again. He blurted out the question that concerned him the most, Maria. She will become a goddess. Who is the adoratress? Crazy Ole poured another goblet of wine, but he did not drink it immediately. He shook the goblet in his hand and answered, "Don't interrupt me. I was just about to say this." The chief god of the Empire of Igut was Horus, and the pharaohs of Igut claimed to be the spokesman of Horus in the human world. The capital of Igut was the city of Bis, located in the Upper Igut. The temple of Horus in Bis was the chief temple of the whole Igut. It was equivalent to the highest theocratic center in the country. All the other temples in the country obeyed its orders. The chief priest of the temple of Horus was, of course, the pharaohs of Igut himself. But Pharaoh himself usually lived in the palace to deal with government affairs. Only during important ceremonies would he ascend the altar as the chief priest. Therefore, there was a chief priest in the temple who represented Pharaoh to offer sacrifices to Horus and other gods. In addition to the chief priest, the temple of Horus also had 3 high priests who were in charge of daily affairs. Their status was much higher than that of the high priests in the local temples. There was also a group of senior priests in the temple of Horus. They were the most honorable group in the empire. The Magic Council and the Magic Academy, which represented the highest authority of magic in the empire, were also located here. The Upper Igut was located in the fertile valley of the Upper Nile River. Another important territory of the Empire of Igut was the Lower Igut, which was located in the delta of the Lower Nile River. In history, the Igut had been divided into 2 countries. The capital of the Lower Igut was Montefiore. Later, Pharaoh completed the unification. The main temple of Montefiore was the Temple of Isis, which was also the most important temple in the whole of the Lower Igut. The chief priest was Pharaoh, which symbolized the rule of the Lower Igut. But the person who offered sacrifices to the gods on behalf of Pharaoh was the adoratress. The chief goddess worshipped in the Temple of Isis was, of course, the goddess Isis. She was the mother of Horus, the goddess of fertility worshipped by the people of the Igut, and the patron goddess of Montefiore since ancient times. The Temple of Isis not only offered sacrifices to the goddess Isis, but also to the various gods of the Igut. In the middle of the temple was the statue of the goddess Isis holding the baby Horus. Isis was worshipped as the virgin in the Igut. There was a tradition since ancient times that the person who offered sacrifices to the goddess on behalf of the people was called the adoratress. The full name was, the adoratress of the goddess Isis. The god's tear on her scepter was the symbol of the adoratress. It represented the loyalty, love, and compassion of the goddess Isis. The adoratress was pure and pious. She offered everything she had to the goddess Isis. Therefore, no adult man was allowed to touch her. They could only kiss the soil under her feet to show their respect. According to the records, 30 years ago, the adoratress of the Temple of Isis, Trony, killed an evil 9th-level sorcerer with the power granted by the goddess. Unfortunately, she fell, and the god's tear on her scepter was destroyed in the fierce battle. This was the official statement of the Igut, and its authority was unquestionable. The evil sorcerer was, of course, Bear. This incident was called the Sorcerer's Disaster in the history of the Igut. As far as Crazy Ole knew, the truth was that Bear, the honorary high priest of the Temple of Isis, the 9th-level supreme mage, had abducted the adoratress and the god's tear. This was absolutely intolerable. It had violated and shaken the authority of the gods who ruled the empire. Pharaoh had issued a secret order to destroy him. Wherever Bear went, the forces of the various shrines in the lower Igut participated in the operation. Bear hid everywhere, and eventually, he could not find a place to stay in the Egyptian empire. He fled through the desert all the way out of the border, and came to the mountains where the three kingdoms of Assur, Babylon, and Hittite met. The pharaohs of Igut sent a large number of mages and warriors to hunt him down, but none of them returned. Bear and Troni were never heard from again. After this incident, all records of Bear as the honorary high priest of the Temple of Isis and a member of the Magic Council of the Igut were destroyed. No one was allowed to mention him again. In the official records, he was an evil sorcerer who was killed by the adoratress, Troni, at the cost of her own life. At this point, Crazy Ol fell silent again. The room was quiet for a long time. Both the old and the young were lost in their own thoughts. Amon finally knew who the adoratress was and what kind of person Maria would become. He could not help but feel sad. Although he knew that nothing could happen between him and Maria, there was always a trace of regret in his heart. He couldn't help but silently think of her and let out a deep sigh. His sigh didn't sound like a 14-year-old child at all. In the end, it was Amon who broke the silence. You said that your student, the Archmage Baal, is close to solving the secrets of the gods. Do you have any concrete proof? Crazy Ol answered absent-mindedly, it was the last message he sent 30 years ago, which confirmed my speculation. But I still don't know how many mysteries he has solved. When I explained the situation of magic arts and body arts, many people's understanding may be wrong. Divine arts and body arts were deliberately separated, and the key content was still missing. That should be the secret of the gods. Chapter 15. Like Amon, Nietzsche was a minor in Duk when he was a teenager. That was more than 100 years ago. At that time, Babylon, Assyria and Hittite were experiencing chaotic wars. The ruler of Saya had changed hands several times. The living conditions in Duk were much worse than they are now. The barren land here could only grow a small amount of barley and beans. There were few sheep grazing on the edge of the charcoal forest. One spring, when all the sheep had been eaten, Nietzsche felt that the food was tasteless, so he went hunting in the forest to the east of the town. A strong miner could also become a good hunter. Although the forest was dangerous, Crazy Ol had hunted many times on the edge of the forest since he was a child. This time, Nietzsche walked a long way. Along the way, he hunted some prey and roasted them into dried meat, which he carried on his back. Unknowingly, he had already passed through the territory of the cave dwarfs and entered the steep Euphrates Valley. When he was chasing a deer, he accidentally lost his footing and fell from the cliff. Fortunately, he was entangled by vines in midair. After breaking many vines, he stabilized his body and climbed to a very secret place. As a result, he found a body that had just died and obtained the person's belongings in a sunken place under the rock to shelter from the rain. The deceased was an advanced mage. In the melee, he used a magic tool to escape from the pursuit. Due to his serious injuries, he fell to the ground in this remote place and finally died. The mage came from the Marduk shrine of Babylon. At that time, Babylon was at war with Hittite, so he must have been an enemy of Hittite. He left his last words on the cave wall with a knife. The difference between Nietzsche and the ordinary miners in Duk was that he could read. Nietzsche's grandfather used to be the clerk of Duk. During the war, he broke the law of some dynasty and was punished by being stripped of his status as a noble. In the last few years of his life, he taught his grandson how to use a clay knife. The place where Nietzsche fell was far from any human habitation. Opposite him was the rapid Euphrates River, and behind him was a steep cliff. The seriously injured mage lacked food and medicine. In pain, he begged and prayed to Marduk for 7 days and 7 nights, trying to get mercy and redemption. Finally, before he died, he gave up all hope. In his last words, the despairing mage expressed that he no longer wanted to return to the shrine. If anyone found him, he requested to be buried here in the traditional way of his family and to bring his belongings to his wife and children. In return, the mage left behind all the secrets of magic he knew, including not only the various stages from the lower to the advanced, but also the information on how to advance from the intermediate to the advanced. Among his belongings were a staff engraved with markings and several precious magical artifacts. That was the turning point in Nietzsche's life. He learned magic in private. Fortunately, he was not seriously injured and had enough food in his backpack. He stayed here for several days, recording all the contents of the magic and burying the mage. Relying on his strong body, he climbed up the cliff along the vines with the mage's belongings. The people of Duk all thought that Nietzsche had lost his life in the forest. But 10 years later, Nietzsche returned to Duk, claiming that he had been captured by the cavemen while hunting and had been a slave in their village for 10 years. Now he finally had a chance to escape from the forest. But no one knew that Nietzsche was now a sorcerer who had just returned from Babylon City, the capital of the Kingdom of Babylon. He was going to Babylon City to return the mage's belongings. As a third-level sorcerer, Nietzsche could handle many situations on the way as long as he was careful. Only in the outside world did Nietzsche realize the uniqueness of the mining skills he had learned since he was a child. When he obtained the mage's belongings, he already had the agility and reflexes of a second-level warrior. It was not entirely luck that allowed him to survive the fall. But when he obtained the mage's belongings and performed the ritual of power awakening, he gained the ability to communicate with the energy of the outside world. It was the so-called power bestowed by the gods. Of course, he chose to learn magic. In Babylon City, Nietzsche finally found the mage's widow, only to find that the family had declined and was in trouble. Most of the priests in the shrines were hereditary, inherited by the eldest son or son of the family who was most suitable to learn magic. The mage was a priest of the Marduk shrine in Babylon City. His only son was not yet an adult and could not inherit the position of priest. Her husband's whereabouts were unknown, so the mage's widow owed a large debt. The creditor was a noble in Babylon City. He asked the widow to marry him in order to take over the territory and inherit her husband's position as a priest, which was common in times of war. Nietzsche's arrival helped the mage's widow out of trouble, because the mage's belongings were very valuable, almost equal to half of his family's wealth. Otherwise, his disappearance would not have caused so much trouble for the family. The widow was very grateful to Nietzsche. Out of kindness, she told him in private, "If you follow my husband's last words and become a sorcerer, don't reveal your identity. Keep hiding until you become a supreme sorcerer. At that time, everything will change dramatically. That is, if you are lucky enough." Then she told Nietzsche to leave as soon as possible, or there might be trouble. Her worry was not wrong. After leaving Babylon City, Nietzsche was hunted down. Maybe the noble wanted to vent his anger. Nietzsche used magic to kill his pursuers. Fearing that his identity as a sorcerer would be exposed, he snuck back to Duk. Nietzsche lived in Duk for another 10 years. Like the other miners, nothing unusual happened. 10 years later, he left Duk again and traveled the continent. It seemed that he did not take the law of Duk's registered miners are not allowed to leave without permission seriously. At that time, he was already a 7th-level supreme sorcerer. Nietzsche traveled all over the continent for another 10 years and had many incredible experiences. When he returned to Duk, he was already an 8th-level supreme sorcerer. It was said that the mayor at that time wanted to hold Nietzsche responsible for leaving without permission, but for some reason, the matter was left unsettled. Since then, Nietzsche had been living in Duk. No one paid attention to him. They just regarded him as a crazy old man who liked to talk nonsense. Body arts and magic could not be practiced at the same level. This was an oracle and a law since ancient times. After obtaining the relics of the mages, Nietzsche awakened the power bestowed by the gods, and began to specialize in magic. He achieved something close to the highest level. But later, there was a problem that bothered him. Before learning magic, He had actually begun to learn something similar to body arts and reached the level of a second-level warrior. When a boy in Duk came of age, the blessing ceremony presided over by the priest in the shrine of Murin was in fact similar to a ceremony to awaken some kind of power. Nietzsche knew nothing about it at that time. That was why he gave up body arts and focused entirely on magic. Unexpectedly, he became a supreme sorcerer. So he began to suspect that there might be some unknown secret behind it. But when he wanted to start practicing body arts again, he found it extremely difficult. He even lost the strength of a second-level warrior when he was young, and his physical strength was barely equivalent to that of a first-level warrior. After all, he was old and had not practiced body arts for many years. Possessing 8th-level magic made him very strong, but it was already good enough that he could maintain his physical health and strength that surpassed that of an ordinary person. This unsuccessful attempt frustrated Nietzsche, and at the same time, he was even more confused. It seemed that because of this, he could never break through to the 9th level in magic. So Nietzsche often disappeared from Duk and returned after a while. Of course, no one cared about this crazy old man anymore. Crazy Ol began to ask around the continent for anecdotes that interested him, stories of famous supreme mages and warriors, their lives and training, and legends about the gods in the shrines. Crazy Ol began to suspect that some of the so-called gods were described as demigods, no different from 9th-level supreme mages or 9th-level warriors. So, were they only demigods, or did they become real gods later on? If so, was it possible for mortals to become immortals? If so, how could they become gods? He also suspected that magic and body arts could be practiced at the same level, or that they were originally one, but were deliberately divided into two parts, making it difficult to practice at the same level. There might be some undiscovered mystery in it, the secret to becoming a god. Crazy Ol did not get the answer. When he was over 100 years old, he realized that it was impossible for him to verify it himself, so he placed his hope on a successor. After searching for a long time in many places, he finally found a talented child in a small village belonging to the Sepet of Cape. His name was Bear, and he was the son of a shepherd. Crazy Ol taught Bear everything he knew, hoping that he could solve the mystery that had puzzled him for most of his life. What happened next was needless to say. The last place Bear escaped to was also a dense forest between the mountains and the Euphrates River. He might have come to Duk to find Crazy Ol, but he could not shake off a large number of pursuers. No one knew what magic Bear cast on a cat, but the cat was able to pass through the heavy siege and the steep mountains to Duk, bringing a message to Crazy Ol. It was not that the cat could speak. One of Bear's best magic was message magic. He sealed a message on the cat. After Crazy Ol read it with magic, the message disappeared. Bear's message was as follows: Dear teacher, your guess should be right. It is not impossible for mortals to become gods. The secret lies in the practice of magic and body arts. No matter which one they are, breaking through the 9th level is the achievement of gods. However, simply practicing magic or body arts is extremely difficult, and there is almost no possibility of further advancement. This is the conclusion I reached after reading the biographies of countless supreme warriors and supreme mages in history. In fact, it is impossible to practice magic and body arts at the same level, at least that is what we have seen. There is one exception, and that is the most basic and almost insignificant technique of Duk. Teacher, you taught me that first. But you are also a Duk miner. You have made great achievements in magic, but you could not make a breakthrough in body arts. Apart from age and physical limitations, it is indeed a puzzle. I may have discovered a secret over the years. The practice of body arts is the same as that of magic. There are different kinds of tests. This kind of test is not specifically mentioned. Those warriors who advance to the next level may have unintentionally met the requirements, but there is no clear summary. If this is a method left by the gods, then it is possible that some content was deliberately ignored from the beginning. There are many more people who practice body arts than magic. Many people do not know what kind of test they have unintentionally passed. They only think that they have relied on hard work, perseverance, and a little luck. They are right, but I want to unravel the secret behind this luck. People do not get lucky out of thin air. I have studied the experiences of countless warriors, both low-level and high-level, and have summed up some patterns in their experiences. These may be the content deliberately ignored by the ancient books. If magic and body arts were originally one, and they were combined as a method of practice, then there was a special order. Just like music, it could not be messed up. Otherwise, there would be no way to practice at the same level, and one could only give up on one achievement in order to obtain another. If you go astray from the beginning, it will be very difficult to give up the power you have gained and start over again. I am not sure about these, and it is still just a guess. The secret of becoming a god may be among them. Even if it is indeed the secret of becoming a god, most people can only look at it and sigh, because whether it is a 9th-level mage or a 9th-level warrior, it is quite rare in this world. I am thinking about it and have not come to a definite conclusion. I have taken the adoratress of the Temple of Isis and the God's Tear, which may help me solve this secret. Because of this, I have been hunted by a large number of mages and warriors. I can only convey this message to you, teacher. Your student, Bear Crazy Ol finally finished talking about the past and sat down to drink in silence. Amon did not speak for a long time. Even if he had a stomach full of questions, he did not know where to start. These topics were too profound for him, beyond his imagination. They had been talking for the whole afternoon. It was getting dark, and it was time for Amon to go home for dinner. By now, Crazy Ol had finished a jar of wine, but there was no drunkenness in his eyes, only a trace of inexplicable tiredness. He put down the cup and said, Amon, I have watched you grow up and trained you since you were a child. Your potential and aptitude are even better than Bear's. Ah. Amon didn't answer. He felt that Crazy Ol was implying something. It seemed that Crazy Ol was plotting something against him. As expected, Crazy Ol continued, I wanted to train you into an excellent supreme sorcerer, but every time I think of Bear's message, I always feel that we should be more cautious. We can't make the first step wrong. Me. Amon did not finish the sentence. Crazy Ol looked at him and smiled. It was a strange smile, of course it's you. Otherwise I wouldn't have taught you so much. You know how to write 2 common languages on the continent, and I taught you how to mine parangons in another way, so that your body and spirit could get the best training. But you never really learned magic and body arts. I've been waiting for this day. What's wrong with this day? Crazy Ol did not answer. He changed the topic, Amon, if you become a sorcerer, you should know from my and Bear's experience that to ensure your safety, you have to wait until the day you become a supreme sorcerer. Of course, the identity of a warrior may be a good cover, if you study body arts and magic at the same time. My child, don't you want to? Even if it's to repay an old man like me, you shouldn't refuse. Amon rubbed his head and replied, yes, why wouldn't I? I'm just the son of an ordinary miner in town. Why should I refuse? Even if it's not to repay you, I'm willing. You won't harm me. Crazy Ol smiled bitterly, harm you? I don't know if I'm harming you or not. But I often think of Bear. If it's harming him, I'm afraid he would be willing to be harmed by me in this way, so that he could have such a wonderful life. I have only one wish for you, and that is to solve the secret of the gods. Amon said, that's too far away. How can I compare with Bear's achievement? I can only imagine. Crazy Ol shook his head, it's all up to you. If you really try, you may not succeed. But if you don't solve the mystery, you'll be living in the world of chaos forever. So, at least we can try. How do you want to teach me? Amon asked. Crazy Ol nodded with satisfaction, you're a special child. Although you're shocked and confused, you're still calm and clear-headed after listening to so many incredible things. Let me tell you, I don't know what secret Bear solved in the end, but I'm sure of one thing. What is it? Amon asked. Crazy Ol, that is the first step to gaining power. Awakening 2 powers at the same time. Amon asked. You already have a solution. Crazy Ol smiled again. You're so smart. You immediately thought of this after listening to my introduction. But there's a slight deviation. It's either awakening two powers at the same time, or awakening one power. This power contains two sides. I look back on my life and trace it back to the source, the inspiration I got from the skills of the miners in Duk. Gabriel asked if you've learned body arts. In fact, you haven't. You just have a strong body and some magic skills that you haven't learned yet. Now I'm going to test you to see if you can awaken that power. But you have to be careful. Awakening the power of two sides also awakens the desire of two sides. It also includes the first test that body arts practitioners have to face, but it's often overlooked. How do you want to test me? Amon asked. Crazy Ol's eyes narrowed into slits. Tonight, go to the cold spring and do something. Come back to me when you've succeeded. Chapter 16. That night, Amon came to the cold spring again, but not to bathe like usual. Usually, he would sit at the edge of the cold spring, soaking his body and washing his hair and face. But this time, Crazy Ol wanted him to dive into the depths of the cold spring to find the mouth of the spring. He wanted to find something special and bring it back. As for what it was, Crazy Ol did not say. The cold spring was piercingly cold. Under the moonlight, a layer of mist condensed on the surface of the water. It seemed to be steaming, but it was actually tiny water droplets condensed in the cold air close to the surface. In this bone-chilling water, ordinary people would have their teeth chattering after a few breaths. Even Amon needed courage to dive into the depths. Amon took a deep breath and dove into the spring silently. He tried not to think about the piercing coldness and focused on feeling the weak water flow at the bottom, looking for the mouth of the spring. The center of the cold spring was not too deep, about the height of two grown men. That was enough for Amon to drown. In the depths of the spring, the chill seemed boundless, and the heat in his body was rapidly draining away. Amon tried his best not to tremble and twitch, but every pore on his body was contracting and trembling, and every muscle fiber was trembling rapidly and weakly. It was difficult to concentrate in this situation, but Amon did it. He felt that the seemingly calm spring was flowing slowly in the depths. He traced the flow back to the source. The source of the cold spring was overflowing from a pile of pebbles at the bottom. Suddenly, Amon felt a deeper coldness in the bone-chilling coldness. It was a subtle difference that was hard to distinguish because his body was already freezing. Amon touched a stone, which looked like a mineral core. When he tried to concentrate on feeling it, his body suddenly shivered uncontrollably and he almost choked on the water. The coldness that he did not pay attention to before was suddenly awakened and crazily drilled into his body. It was not that the spring water had become colder, but that Amon seemed to have communicated with the source of the coldness, awakening and amplifying that feeling. For a moment, he almost could not bear it. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, and he even suspected that he would be frozen in the spring water. However, Amon did not leave. There was a warm current rising in his body, spreading throughout his bones and limbs. This reaction usually only appeared when he left the cold spring and sat down to rest, but now it appeared in the spring. It meant that he had stayed long enough and was about to exceed a certain limit. His body had instinctively protected itself and awakened a kind of power. Amon grasped the pebble, which was the size of an ore, but he couldn't lift it. It looked like a rock that had fallen into the water, but it seemed to be fixed in place by a mysterious force, in a state of stalemate. Amon, who was holding his breath, concentrated all of his spirit. In an instant, the cold and hot currents in his body seemed to be under his control. His whole body was trembling rapidly, and his chest was suffocating. His right hand released an astonishing amount of power. Suddenly, he felt the pebble was lifted. Amon's body jumped out of the water and landed with a plop, still holding the stone tightly in his hand. He climbed back to the shore, but he did not care about the pebble. Instead, he closed his eyes and sat there. He seemed to be motionless, but he felt that the blood in his body was flowing rapidly, and every pore was trembling in a way that the naked eye could not detect. The water droplets on his body evaporated, but the coldness in his body took a long time to slowly disperse. He had only been in the water for a short time, but he felt very tired. He stood up and moved his limbs, his movements like strange gymnastics. After he calmed down, he began to carefully examine the pebble. It looked very much like a mineral core, but Aman had seen all kinds of mineral cores, so he couldn't help but feel that there was something different about it. Although it was similar to a natural pebble, it felt a little artificial, although it was made very skillfully. When he felt it in the spring water, it was so cold, but now that he held it in his hand, it was only the normal coolness of a stone, and he could not feel anything unusual. Thinking of this, Aman suddenly realized that something was wrong. He put down the pebble and dived into the cold spring again. The water was still cold, but as Aman had guessed, the bone-chilling coldness was gradually dissipating. So far, Aman should have finished Crazy Ole's task, but he did not stop. He dived into the cold spring again. This time, it was much easier than the last time. Soon, he grabbed a pebble in each hand and threw it to the shore. Then he took a breath and dived again. After throwing 20 pebbles in a row, he climbed back to the shore. This time, he was freezing. His body was a little purple, and he was panting and shaking like a sieve. It took him a long time to recover. At this time, he felt that the moon seemed to be brighter, and a warm feeling enveloped him and slowly seeped into his body. He looked up and saw a parangan floating above him, emitting a soft light. When he looked back again, Crazy Ole was already standing behind him. "Child, you'll hurt yourself. I didn't ask you to take out the whole magic formation. You just need to find the aquatic ore in the middle and use your power to take it out." As Crazy Ole spoke, the parangan hanging in the air became brighter. The soft white light seemed to turn into a thick mist, which gradually healed Aman's body. At the same time, there was an oppressive feeling that made him speechless. "But you're even more outstanding than I thought. The reason I asked you to take out the aquatic ore is to test two abilities. First, your body must be able to withstand the cold spring and still be able to use your power without being disturbed. Second, your spirit and willpower must be strong enough to be able to detect the slightest changes in that environment. Only in this way can you awaken the power of two sides." As he spoke, Crazy Ole waved his short wand, and the 20 pebbles on the ground broke into pieces silently, as if someone had used a sledgehammer to crack open a mining core. The 20 parangons were exposed. As for the first pebble Aman took out, its surface rippled like water, and then it flowed like water into the sand, revealing a blue parangan in the middle. Crazy Ole explained, 30 years ago, I used 1 aquatic ore and 20 parangons to set up a magic formation here to create this cold spring. Now its mission has been accomplished. Those pebbles are not natural ores, they're camouflage. I'm not surprised that you found the aquatic ore, but I'm surprised that you've found all the camouflaged pebbles." As he finished, the parangan fell from the air and was caught by Crazy Ole. The tranquil moonlight reflected on the surface of the water. Aman stood up and picked up the blue parangan. "It's called the aquatic ore." Crazy Ole nodded, "Yes. Different colors of parangons have their own names. The blue ones are called the aquatic ore by the mages." As a child growing up in Duk, he certainly knew that there were 4 special parangons other than the colorless and transparent ones, red, blue, black and white. But this was the first time Aman had heard of the aquatic ore. These 4 special parangons were not as rare as the god's tear, but they were still very rare. Even in a place like Duk, only a few were produced each year. If luck was not on your side, you might not even see one for several years. Last time Aman mined the god's tear, but it was taken away by Judah before he had the chance to examine it. Today was the first time he had a chance to study the special parangons other than the standard ones. As he was playing with the parangan, he found that Crazy Ole had turned and left. "Where are you going?" Aman called after him. "Home to sleep, of course." I was afraid that something might have happened to you in the cold spring, so I came to take a look, ready to save you at any time. Since you're fine, I can have a good sleep. Crazy Ol answered without looking back. What about these parangons? You're not taking them with you? Amon called again. I threw them here 30 years ago. I never thought of taking them away. You took them out, so they're yours. They'll be useful in the future. Tomorrow night, at the same time, in the same place, I'll hold the awakening ceremony for you. Don't forget. As his voice faded away, Crazy Ol disappeared into the black fire thicket. After Crazy Ol left, Amon sat by the spring and studied the aquaticore. When he tried to concentrate on it, he always felt a mysterious power fluctuating between the parangon and the spring. Something in his body was stirring, as if it was something he longed for. His mind wandered again. The next night, the awakening ceremony Crazy Ol held for Amon turned out to be a kind of prayer. But different from the rites held by the mages, the supreme sorcerer did not ask Amon to pray to any specific god. He only taught him how to focus his mind, so that everything in the outside world could be seen but not seen, so that he could clearly feel the subtle changes in his body and mind, concentrate his spirit and communicate with the origin of all things. This was, of course, much more difficult than praying to the gods. Crazy Ol told Amon that he could also pray to the gods, and explained with a smile, I heard you and Aristotle discussing the origin of divinity the other day. If you can understand what he said, then you can understand what I mean. To awaken the power, you must be fully prepared. Otherwise, the ceremony will not succeed. And you are well prepared. This ceremony seemed to have opened a door and touched upon an unknown world. Crazy Ol asked Amon to put the aquaticore in front of him, so that he could gather his spiritual power and use the aquaticore as a medium to feel how to communicate with this unknown world. Amon could clearly feel a cooling sensation. It seemed to be there but not there. It permeated the surroundings and had no definite shape. When he felt the coolness, it was as if he could turn into ice. This was the most familiar feeling he had in the cold spring for a long time. Then he felt the spring around him resonating with him in a strange rhythm. This rhythm was neither breathing nor heartbeat, but an indescribable natural rhythm. At the same time, Crazy Ol saw the hazy light of the aquaticore shrouding Amon. He could not help but sigh. If you use the god's tear to perform this ceremony, it will be much easier to awaken the power. The aquaticore is good enough. Even without any external help, you will still succeed. But it's better this way, and it will be easier for you to grasp the specific magic. Amon did not hear what Crazy Ol said. He was immersed in a new world. Was this the so-called power bestowed by the gods? Or was it the power of the origin of nature, or the hidden power in his body? What he felt was not only the strange waves of the outside world, but also an indescribable sense of relaxation and pleasure. He felt that he had never been so strong. He felt inexplicably powerful, as if he could control or conquer everything. When he focused his mind, he really felt the power of two sides. Desire always appeared with power. The greater the power, the more desire there would be. For example, a starving person might only want to have a full meal, but an emperor might want to conquer the entire continent and obtain endless wealth and power. In the seemingly tranquil atmosphere, all kinds of desires or wishes quietly emerged. It was hard to tell whether they came from the body or the soul. He might be able to suppress it when he was focused on praying, but in his daily life, Amon soon felt this kind of disturbance. The ceremony was just the beginning. Crazy Ol told him that he had to gradually master this feeling before he could truly learn magic and body arts. It would probably take some time. In the next few days, Amon came to the spring every night and prayed attentively. But most of the day, he was still a miner in the town, looking no different from before. He often thought of Maria and what happened that night. He thought of her body and her kiss, the feeling of his hand on her chest, and his thoughts changed subtly. He would indulge in a fantasy that he would be invincible, that he could defeat Gabriel, that he could drive away Rod Dick and his bodyguards, leaving only him and Maria, and then, he did possess unprecedented power, but along with the appearance of power, there was also a subtle change in his mentality. His desires and wishes would expand, and they would fly endlessly as if they had grown wings. When he focused his mind and body every night, he would be aware of these things, as if he was enduring a kind of torture. One voice seemed to be saying, "You have the power, get everything you want," and the other voice seemed to be saying, "How ridiculous, you are so weak that you can only be laughed at." And Amon's soul seemed to be watching the two voices coldly, but he was unconsciously affected by them. When Maria was going through all this, Gabriel told her that she only needed to observe with a pure heart and not be influenced by it. But Crazy Ol did not say that to Amon. He only told Amon that it was a test, and it was up to him to face it. In addition to the turmoil that attacked his soul, Amon's body also had an unusual reaction. He had an illusion that he was getting stronger every day. His steps were so strong and steady when he walked. Every bone and every muscle in his body was slightly creaking as if they contained infinite energy. He even had an impulse to clench his fist and punch someone. As the son of a drunkard, he had been ridiculed by many people in this town since he was a child. At this moment, Amon had an inexplicable desire to beat up anyone he didn't like. It was as if a ferocious and aggressive beast was lurking in his body. Amon did not fight in the town, but he did something that stunned and envied the whole town. The result was that Lord Shog, the priest and clerk of the temple, fainted and vomited blood in public. The cause of the incident was the parangons he took out from the cold spring. Amon had been carrying them carefully. When he passed by the Murin temple that day, he saw Shog and his servants registering the taxes paid by the townspeople in front of the gate. The mayor was also standing beside them. Not knowing where the impulse came from, Amon turned around with a sneer and said loudly, "Mr. Mayor, I want to pay my taxes." Before Mayor Dusty could answer, Shog asked uneasily and curiously, "What taxes do you want to pay, Amon? Your family hasn't collected the ores from the mine these days, has it?" Taking out the parangons from the ores was only the last step. The ores were mined in the mine to the north of the village, on the edge of the mountains of the Saya Plateau. It was impossible for one person to cut open the mountain, chisel, and excavate the ores alone. It was the collective work of the miners in the town, supervised by someone. The ores were distributed to each family according to their contribution. Shog, the clerk, did not register that Amon's family had collected the ores recently, which made him feel lucky. Amon replied, "Dear priest and clerk, I happened to find a batch of ores washed down by a mountain torrent in a stream in the charcoal forest. It was like a gift from the gods. There was no need to dig the ores manually. I took them home and opened them up. I took out a batch of parangons. According to the laws of the town, these are also taxable." Chapter 17. Mayor Dusty was both surprised and amused. He could see that Amon wanted to pick a fight with Shog. He could not help but wonder how brave the kid was. Amon did have a reason to pick a fight with Shog. Shog almost cut off one of his fingers last time, and Amon had never offended the priest. But thinking was one thing, but the kid actually did it. Amon claimed to have found a natural ore that did not need to be mined in the stream from the mountain torrent. This situation was not impossible, but it was very rare. If some townspeople really found one or two of these ores, they would only take them home secretly. There was no way they would report it. Of course, they would keep the ores. As long as they did not say anything, no one would know. By doing this, Amon clearly wanted Shog to pay the tax for him. Who asked the priest to make such a promise just to apologize? Shog's face darkened, but he could not say anything in front of the crowd. He asked, "Amon, you're a lucky and honest kid. Can you let me have a look at your ores?" He thought that Amon had found one or two ores at most. When Amon took out a piece of sheepskin and opened it, everyone around gasped. Shog's eyes darkened and he fainted on the spot. If it were not for the servant next to him who caught him, the back of his head would have hit the stairs. In the dirty sheepskin, there were not only 20 colorless and transparent standard oars, but also a special oars that glowed with a dark blue luster, like strange and mysterious water rippling in it. The onlookers were all shocked speechless. At this time, the mayor was the calmest. He was the first to come back to his senses. He took a deep breath and asked, "Amon, did you really find these?" Amon nodded without changing his expression. "Yes, it must have been a mountain torrent that happened to open up a vein of ore. A bunch of ore cores were exposed in the dry stream. I was very lucky to find them." Dusty swallowed and felt his lips were a little dry. He looked around and said in a low voice, "Actually, you can do this to yourself." He only said half of each sentence, but the meaning was obvious. In fact, Amon could have stayed quietly and not told anyone. But doing so would force Master Shog to pay the tax, which would not benefit Amon. Master Shog would definitely take revenge. How could a miner's son offend Master Shog's power and status? Someone said, "Master Shog has fainted. What should we do?" Amon also replied, "Mayor, I want to pay taxes. You won't make me violate the law in public, right?" Mayor Dusty sighed and said helplessly, "Wake Master Shog up. We all know that Amon's family tax for this year will be paid by him." Only the mayor knew why Shog fainted. If there were only 20 parangons, Shog would not have lost his composure like this even if it was like a knife cutting through his flesh. The key was the blue parangon. The miners in the town did not know its value. According to the tax, it was equivalent to 200 standard parangons. In other words, Shog had to pay a total of 198 parangons for Amon. One parangon was equivalent to 20 gold coins, so Shog had to pay close to 4,000 gold coins. Such a sum of money could buy a luxurious manor in Saya, with a flock of servants and cattle. Shog was woken up by someone rubbing his chest. He stood up with the help of 2 servants and asked in a trembling voice, "Do you really want to pay taxes, Amon?" His eyes looked like they were about to drip blood as he spoke. If looks could kill, Amon would have been dismembered. Amon met Shog's stare without dodging. He looked into Shog's eyes as if provoking him. He answered calmly and clearly, "Yes." "Does the clerk in charge of tax registration want me to evade taxes in public?" He had to pay the tax even if he didn't want to. Shog avoided Amon's eyes and said to Dusty with a pleading look and a pitiful tone, "Mayor, I'll take the tax and register it as 21 parangons." It seemed that only Dusty understood what he meant. It was a word game. A blue parangon was still a parangon, so there seemed to be nothing wrong with registering it. But it involved a secret of Shog and Dusty, and it was the best way for the 2 nobles to make money. In the past, they would be overjoyed when a miner found a special parangon. The townspeople did not know how valuable the special parangon was, because it would be taken away as soon as it was mined. It could not be used as a currency in the market like a standard parangon. All they knew was that it was very rare. Maybe one would be found in hundreds of parangons. If it was mined, the mayor would be happy to reward the miner with an extra parangon. The rest of the matter was left to the mayor and the clerk's dirty tricks. A special parangon was worth 200 standard parangons. According to the law, one could keep 20 parangons for himself. The miner who mined it only got 1 as a reward, and the other 19 were pocketed by Dusty and Shog. That was not the most profitable situation. If the mayor allowed it to be a word game, and the clerk only registered the parangon instead of the special one, they could get a share of 198 parangons. But the situation was different now. The more valuable the blue parangon was, the more Shog had to pay for Amon's tax. Shog was hinting to Mayor Dusty not to register it as the aquaticore, just like he did before. He was even winking at the mayor, hoping to hide the value of the aquaticore and trick Amon into giving him a normal parangon as a reward. In this way, not only would he not lose anything, but he would also make a fortune. Mayor Dusty hesitated. He coughed and was about to speak. Unexpectedly, Amon said loudly, "My lord priest, I'm sorry." Don't forget I can read too. Please register it truthfully. 20 standard parangons and 1 blue parangon. I can read it. This sentence was like an invisible hammer. Shog's body suddenly trembled, and then he leaned softly on his servant's shoulder. He did not dare to look at Aman, but only at Dusty. Dusty's face darkened. He said to Aman in a low voice, "Leave the taxes to the lords. Anyway, they won't make you pay. And your blue parangon, can you give it to me? The town will give you a special reward." Aman asked, "If the taxes have been paid in full, then all the parangons can stay in my hands, can't they?" Dusty's throat was a little dry. He said in a low voice, "If you pay the special parangons, you will get an extra reward. You don't lose anything." Before he finished, Aman felt a hand on his shoulder. Crazy Old's voice was unhurried, "My lord, I often see this kind of thing. Some people take things that don't belong to them. Over time, it becomes a habit, but they forget that it doesn't belong to them. If one day they don't get what doesn't belong to them, they will feel that the real owner shouldn't have it. What kind of person is that?" Looking at Shog's pitiful face begging the mayor, Aman somehow felt a nameless anger rising in his heart. He could hardly suppress it. He wanted to take 2 steps forward and punch Shog in the face. The thought made Aman's body tremble. Crazy Old appeared at this moment. He put his hand on Aman's shoulder, and an invisible force stopped Aman from moving. Mayor Dusty did not speak, but Crazy Old continued, "This is the devil. Desire is not necessarily evil. It can encourage people to create and pursue more beauty. But I want to tell a story. There was once a man who stole a gold coin from me every day, and no one pursued the matter. Later on, I kindly told him that it was not good to do so, but his heart was filled with hatred and curses. He asked me to encourage and praise him to continue this behavior, otherwise it would become my evil deed, but he completely forgot that he had once received so much from me. Tell me, whose evil deed is this?" Mayor Dusty broke out in a cold sweat under Crazy Old's stare. He unconsciously took a step back and turned to Shog, "Clerk, Aman's request is normal and legal. Since he can read, let him watch you register. Write down 20 standard parangons and 1 blue parangon. You will pay the tax." As soon as he said this, Lord Shog's eyes turned white. He straightened his body and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he fell into the arms of a servant. The servant hurriedly carried him into the shrine for emergency treatment. Most people still did not understand what had happened. It seemed that Lord Shog was sick, very sick. Crazy Old watched coldly as Shog was carried into the shrine. Then he said to Dusty, "The clerk is not well and can't work. Mayor, please register it yourself." Dusty wiped the sweat off his forehead and nodded, "Okay, I'll register it. Take the kid away." But when he saw Shog vomiting blood and fainting, he calmed down somehow. He felt that this noble priest was just like a lowly and pitiful worm. Shog vomited blood and fainted. But when he saw Shog vomiting blood and fainting, he calmed down somehow. Crazy Old's hand on Aman's shoulder tightened. Aman involuntarily turned half a circle and followed Crazy Old. "Kid, Shog deserves it. But you're suffering. Do you understand the desire of 2 sides? Learning how to face it is like learning how to use power. What you did today was dangerous. You were not calm enough. If you don't learn how to face this test, I won't see your achievements in the future. I'm afraid I'll see your corpse soon." They were in Crazy Old's house. Nietzsche drank as he spoke, but he did not pour any for Aman. Aman asked, "You mean Shog will take revenge on me?" Crazy Old laughed, "Of course. You know the consequences. Of course he wants to kill you. Do you know the value of the aquaticore?" Aman said, "I don't know. You didn't tell me. I think it's worth a lot." Crazy Old said, "People in Duk have a different concept of money. 1 aquaticore is worth 200 parangons, which is equivalent to 4,000 gold parangons. And it's not something you can buy just because you want to. Such a sum of money can cause bloodshed anywhere, let alone in the hands of a kid like you. Duke is safe for now, at least I'm here. But what about you? Amon lowered his head. You seem to know what I'm going to do. You didn't stop me. Crazy Ol shook his head. Persuasion won't work. I can stop you, but I can't face the rising desire for you. After this incident, you should understand how to control it. Face it with a clear mind and even enjoy it. But don't let it control your thoughts and actions. Besides, I'd like to see you deal with Shog. He deserves it. But you have to watch yourself. Amon nodded. I think I understand. Crazy Ol stood up. It's good that you understand. Now you can learn the most basic first-level magic. There are many kinds of magic, including elemental magic, spiritual magic, prayer magic, spatial magic, message magic and so on. It's difficult for a sorcerer to master all kinds of magic. Most of them have their own specialties. I don't know what you're good at. Since you have the Aquaticore, you can start with water magic. Magic was so mysterious and profound in Amon's mind. But Crazy Ol told him that the standard to become a first-level mage was very simple, a sheet of ice. Summoning the water in the environment, condensing it into ice, and quietly covering the ground with a layer of ice. What Amon didn't know was that this meant 3 kinds of water magic. Although they were all first-level magic, the combination was not easy, and it had to be done silently. Crazy Ol didn't tell him how difficult it was for a beginner sorcerer. He only said that it was the easiest way to start. Condensing water into ice was easy. Following Crazy Ol's method, Amon did it on his first try. Summoning the water in the environment to form countless tiny ice crystals, gradually covering the ground. It was a bit difficult at first, but he succeeded after a few days. Crazy Ol smiled at Amon. You can practice it again and again, but don't use the Aquaticore when you practice by yourself. When Amon didn't use the Aquaticore as a medium, he found that it was 10 times more difficult to use the same magic. Crazy Ol should have given him a staff, but the old man seemed to have forgotten. He wanted Amon to use his own magic power without any tools. Amon couldn't do it. In fact, many low-level mages couldn't do it, including third-level mages. At least they needed a staff with a common parangan. But Amon already knew what to do. He had mastered the technique. He had succeeded many times with the Aquaticore, so he didn't doubt that his method was wrong. It was just that he didn't have enough power. He didn't have any doubts or frustration. Practice hard. At this time, Crazy Ol explained to Amon the special features of the Aquaticore and how to use it. The Aquaticore not only helped to awaken the power, but also greatly assisted the casting of water magic. If Amon had used his own power from the beginning, he wouldn't have succeeded. Using the Aquaticore was a shortcut. However, there was a principle to using tricks, and it could only be used in 2 situations. The first was to better grasp a certain magic, and to understand its methods and techniques in the most thorough way possible. The second was when fighting for life and death, it was impossible to hold back any strength. But after mastering a certain magic, it was best not to use it during practice. Otherwise, it would lead to dependence and complacency, which was not good for one's power. Crazy Ol said so Amon did as he said. He couldn't do it without the Aquaticore, but he wasn't in a hurry. Amon kept an eye on it. Every once in a while, he would try it again with the Aquaticore to see how much his power had grown. He was satisfied with the result. The ice was forming faster and faster, and the area was getting bigger and bigger. Crazy Ol, of course, knew that it was too difficult for Amon to form ice with his own power, and to do it without anyone noticing. He would be surprised if he could do it easily. All geniuses had their limits. Except for that, Crazy Ol didn't teach Amon anything else, not even body arts. Until one day, Amon spent the whole afternoon secretly forming an almost imperceptible layer of ice on the doorstep of Crazy Ol's house. He wanted to see Crazy Ol fall, and then he could help him. But when Crazy Ol came home, the ice disappeared, and Amon, who was behind the door, slipped and fell. Crazy Ol said to him, "My child, you're already a first-level sorcerer. It's a great achievement for others in such a short time, but for you, I only hope you can make it in time. Because the disaster is coming soon. Because disaster is coming soon. At that time, you must be able to protect yourself, and you must learn how to protect yourself." Amon asked curiously, "What disaster?" Crazy Ol didn't want to say more. He just asked, "Do you still go to the cold spring to practice magic every night?" Amon nodded, "Yes, I'm used to it." The cold spring was no longer piercingly cold, but just a cool pond. But Amon was used to calling it the cold spring, and he also went there to bathe and practice magic every day. It was a secluded place with a peaceful environment. Amon felt a sense of familiarity and intimacy. Crazy Ol didn't say anything more. He just nodded, "Well, go on." Amon didn't know why Crazy Ol said the disaster was coming, but that night, Amon really did encounter a disaster. Chapter 18. Shog was depressed for a long time. He did not go to a doctor because there was only one doctor in Duk, and that was the priest himself. Shog was qualified to learn magic. As a priest of the shrine, practicing magic was one of his daily duties. But not every priest was an excellent mage. It depended on the individual's aptitude and cultivation. It took Shog several years to awaken his power. In the end, he had to go through a ceremony presided over by the supreme mage Goliath in the shrine of Saya. But so far, he had barely reached the standard of a second-level mage. He could only use a few low-level magic, including prayer magic, the most important of which was healing magic. The healing skill of the divine prayer was the most important cultivation content for a priest of a village shrine. It was not only a guarantee that he would be respected by the residents, but also a symbol of a miracle. It had been almost a month since he vomited blood and fainted in public. Lord Shog had given him many healing spells. When he recovered, there was nothing wrong with his body. But he still felt depressed, as if something was stuck in his heart. There was something that he had to get rid of. Finally, the time came. After breakfast, he called for Maki, a servant in the shrine. Shog was the only priest and clerk in the town, but it was impossible for him to be the only one in the temple. A lot of work was done by servants and assistants. Lord Shog lived like a prince, and the work he usually handled was just registration. Maki was his most capable assistant, helping him with the daily affairs of the shrine and managing the other servants. He had already achieved the third-level body arts. Lord Shog was very kind today. He smiled and greeted Maki, "Come here and sit down." Maki was flattered, "My lord, is it impolite for me to sit with you?" Lord Shog pretended to be displeased, "What are you talking about? You are my most capable assistant, my most trusted companion. What's wrong with sitting at the same table? Sit down, or I will be angry." Maki sat down at the table. Shog pushed a plate of snacks to him. It was a kind of fresh wild fruit that the servants picked in the forest east of the town. It was sweet and sour. Maki took one and ate it carefully. Shog smiled and asked, "Your body arts have reached the third level, right?" "He's only one step away from becoming an intermediate warrior." Maki hurriedly replied, "I was originally just an ordinary miner in the town. It was you who told me that there was something similar to physical cultivation in the mining techniques, and you also read me books about physical cultivation. That's how I was able to achieve what I have now. Don't worry, sir. I didn't tell anyone about it as per your instructions." Shog smiled happily. "What's there to worry about? You're the one I trust the most. If you can become an intermediate warrior, I can go to the lords of the city and make an exception for you. If you're lucky, I can find an opportunity to make you a noble, or at least let you become a warrior of the shrine and a deputy with a divine title." Maki quickly stood up and took a step back. "Thank you, Master Shog. I don't know how to repay you." Shog waved his hand. "Sit down, let's talk. Maki, have you found out what I asked you to investigate a few days ago? Maki sat down again and answered seriously, as per your instructions, I've been keeping an eye on Amon for the past 10 days. He often goes to Crazy Ole's house, and he also goes to the charcoal forest alone at night, passing through a very hidden path among the rocks. Shog frowned. He's really brave. A kid going to the charcoal forest at night? What's he doing there? Maki shook his head. I don't know. After saying this, he seemed to feel that this answer was not appropriate. He thought about it and said, is he looking for ores again? He picked up so many ores in the charcoal forest last time. Does he want to try his luck again? Looking for ores in the middle of the night? Shog was puzzled. He lowered his voice and asked, what about the other thing I asked you to do? Maki also lowered his voice. I went to Amon's house 3 times when he went out at night. The drunkard didn't notice at all. There are very few things in his house, but they are also very simple. I don't even need to look through them. I found a few dozen silver coins and 2 gold coins. According to your instructions, don't touch anything until you find the parangons. The parangons should be with Amon all the time. I remember they were wrapped in a sheepskin. Shog moved closer to Maki. Maki, I want you to do one thing tonight. Maki's face turned pale and stiff. He did not speak for a while. Shog stood up and walked behind him. He patted his shoulder and said, the 20 parangons are all yours. As for the blue parangon, please put it in the Hall of Murin. Don't let anyone find it. It's for the goddess. I won't be there, and you didn't give it to me. Got it? Before Maki could answer, Shog put his hand on Maki's shoulder and said, if you can become an advanced warrior, I'll apply for the position of a temple warrior for you. Then you won't have to pay taxes and you'll still get your salary. As for the money, if it's a gift to the lord of the city, you may have the chance to become the 3rd noble in the town. You can choose how you want to live your life. But don't forget that I'm treating you as my most trusted assistant. Maki gritted his teeth. His face twitched a few times. Finally, he nodded, I understand, my lord. I'll do as you say. Shog went to the corner and poured 2 glasses of wine. He sat down again and handed one to Maki. Then he shook his head seriously, you're wrong. You must remember that this is not my order. If someone finds out, they can only say that you were following Amon and trying to find the place where he picked up the ores. I didn't know about it. In the middle of the night in the charcoal forest, Amon was practicing his water element summoning by the spring. He did not practice the magic taught by Crazy Ole. After all, it was in the nature of children to play, and Amon regarded water magic as a game. The water in the environment was controlled and condensed into tiny crystals, like a layer of mist. The crystals floated on the surface of the water and changed into various shapes. It was very interesting. Sometimes they were tiny water droplets, sometimes they were tiny ice crystals, and sometimes they dissipated in the air. Amon was having fun when he suddenly felt something was wrong. The muscles on his back tightened as if he was being watched. He stopped, took out the aquaticore with his left hand, and held a stick with his right hand. Crossing the gloomy charcoal forest in the middle of the night, Amon did not come empty-handed. He brought a very special stick with him. It was the most valuable thing in his house except for the parangons. Amon's father was a drunkard, especially after the death of his mother. But he was also the best blacksmith in Duk when he was young. That stick was a souvenir left behind by his drunkard father many years ago. It looked like a branch that was not very straight, and its surface was mottled. The yellow was rust, and the black was ash. It was almost impossible to tell that it was a high-quality iron embryo. The miners of Duk were forbidden to forge the processed iron into armor and weapons, and no one taught them how to do so. What they produced were only iron embryos and iron embryos. The best iron sand was not mined in the mines, but panned from the feces of an ironback that lived in the mountains rich in iron. It was very rare. When Amon's father was young, in order to test his skills, he secretly collected the best iron sand and smelted it into this embryo. Later, he never traded this stick for wine, but kept it in the fireplace as a stick to fiddle with the coals. Every time Amon passed through the charcoal forest at night, he used this stick as a walking stick for self-defense. The gloomy charcoal forest was not as dangerous as it looked. If one did not get lost, it was actually a very quiet place. But occasionally, there would be hares and wild dogs, and they would run away when they heard the sound of people. But in the most hungry times, wild dogs could also attack people or sheep, so it was always good to be careful. Holding the stick in his hand, Amon quietly looked around. The moonlight was quiet and silent. He didn't find anything. The surroundings were full of black rocks and bushes, the most suitable environment for hiding. Even if there was something hiding, it would be difficult to see it. For some reason, Amon always felt uneasy. He suddenly closed his eyes and clenched the aquaticore in his left hand. The aquaticore emitted a faint blue light, but Amon did not shine it out. Unconsciously, a faint mist rose from the spring and floated in the surrounding forest. With the help of the aquaticore, Amon used the simplest water element magic he knew to the fullest. Sure enough, he found something wrong. Within the range of the magic, the mist in the air was quietly summoned by him. Even with his eyes closed, Amon could still feel the shape of the rocks and bushes floating in the mist. About 10 steps behind him, there was a man. The man was hiding behind a strange rock, with half of his head peeking out through the bushes. He was holding something in his hand. The shape was very familiar. It was the most common miner's sledgehammer in Duk. Elemental magic was usually not used for detection because its sensing range was much smaller than that of detection magic, and its casting speed was slow. If the opponent was a shrewd mage, he might be able to detect it in an instant. Detection magic was an advanced magic, and the most typical one was the eye of puppetry, which could detect the situation in a very large range. Amon didn't know what detection magic was. He hadn't even heard of the eye of puppetry. But by doing so, he inadvertently used the simplest water element magic to achieve the effect of detection magic, and it was also in line with the most basic principle of detection magic. Maki, who had been following Amon in the dark, did not know that he had been exposed. But Amon did not move. He was still sitting there quietly. The night was getting darker and darker, and the chill in the air was getting heavier and heavier. Maki finally could not stand it anymore. He almost thought that Amon had fallen asleep, so he quietly walked out of the bushes with the sledgehammer in his hand. First-level warriors had extraordinary explosive strength. Second-level warriors usually needed agility in addition to strength. Third-level warriors needed to master the coordination of strength, speed, and endurance. As a third-level warrior in Roddick's personal guards, he could pierce through several cows with a single throw of his spear. Although Maki had never been trained in this way, he moved like a nimble leopard cat with the heavy sledgehammer. He barely made a sound. There was a small open space next to the spring. Maki walked out of the bushes and came to a place where Amon could see him. He was only about 20 steps away. Suddenly, a fierce look appeared in his eyes. He sped up and swung the hammer in his right hand. For a third-level warrior, this distance could be covered in the blink of an eye. There was no time for Amon to react, and Amon seemed to have no reaction at all. However, Maki had only taken 2 steps when something unexpected happened. His foot slipped, and his body swayed. He tried his best to steady himself, but his other foot slipped again when it touched the ground. Because of the inertia, he could no longer stand straight and fell to the ground. The hammer slipped out of his hand and fell into the spring. When he realized what had happened and tried to get up, he suddenly received a heavy blow on his shoulder. The pain almost made him faint. Maki struggled to raise his head and saw that Amon was already standing in front of him. Amon was pointing a branch at his face, and his other foot was stepping on his shoulder. This kid was so strong that he could not even turn over. The ground was so cold that he could not help but shiver. Amon asked in surprise, "Maki, why are you here?" Why did you follow me here in the middle of the night? It was Maki's bad luck today. Under normal circumstances, a third-level warrior would not be afraid of a first-level mage in melee combat if he was prepared and vigilant. However, Maki did not expect that Amon could use magic. Although it was just a simple first-level water magic, the effect of its control and application was so incredible. After discovering Maki, Amon secretly condensed a layer of slippery ice on the way and used a thin mist to cover the reflection of light. If Maki had walked slowly, he would have been fine, but if he rushed forward, he would definitely have slipped. This was the power of magic. It did not need to be very powerful, but it was a different kind of power. Amon also used the aquaticore. Maki was very angry. He stretched out his hand, trying to grab Amon's ankle. He shouted, "Let me go, Amon. If you can come here, why can't I? Child, how can you be so rude? Of course you can come to the charcoal forest. But why are you following me in the middle of the night?" Amon did not let go of Maki. He gently poked the back of Maki's hand with the branch in his hand. Maki gritted his teeth in pain. Fortunately, his bones were not broken. Only then did he realize that the stick in Amon's hand was not a branch. It was harder and heavier than pig iron. Maki panicked. He suddenly realized that in this place, Amon could kill him with the stick without anyone noticing. His original idea was to kill Amon quietly in a secluded place. He did not expect the situation to be reversed. He hurriedly explained, "Amon, I followed you just to see where you found the ores. I also want to try my luck." Amon narrowed his eyes, "You think I'm looking for ores in the middle of the night?" Maki replied, "Aren't you? Otherwise, why would you come to the charcoal forest every day?" Of course, Amon could not tell Maki that he was practicing magic. Suddenly, he realized that when he used magic to make Maki fall, this person must have noticed it. This was a secret that could not be revealed. He raised the iron stick in his hand but did not put it down. He asked coldly, "Tian Tian, have you followed me many times? Why did you rush towards me with a sledgehammer?" Chapter 19. Maki's voice lowered. I'm just getting impatient. I wanted to ask you where you found the ore core. Amon, we are neighbors. I watched you grow up. How could I hurt you? I'm sorry for what happened tonight. Let's just say it never happened. If you forgive me, I will. Maki's words stopped abruptly. Amon saw the strangest thing he had ever seen in his life. A thin layer of ice had formed on the ground, and in an instant, it enveloped Maki's entire body and froze him in place. Then, countless cracks appeared on the thin ice, and Maki's body shattered into countless small pieces. The layer of ice then disappeared, leaving only a dark red mark on the ground. Blood, flesh, and mud. Maki had silently disappeared forever. Amon looked up. It was crazy. Amon couldn't tell what magic this supreme sorcerer had just used. Was it freeze or space cutting? In the blink of an eye, Maki disappeared without even asking anything. It was the first time for Amon to witness a murder with his own eyes, especially in such a strange and horrifying scene. He took a few breaths before asking, "Crazy, you killed him just like that? Didn't you ask him clearly?" Crazy Ol's face darkened. "He followed you for 10 days and went to your house 3 times in the middle of the night. Today, he suddenly rushed to you with a sledgehammer. What other possibilities do you think?" Amon was shocked. "He went to my house when I was not here." Crazy Ol nodded, "Yes. You were calm a few days ago, but you were not careful enough. Tonight, you made a breakthrough and found him. You have to pay attention to the slightest changes in the environment. Do you know how important this is? Alas, maybe I'm asking too much of you. You're just a kid after all. Anyway, you didn't kill him right away, which means you've passed the test of impulsive desire." Amon asked in confusion, "You said that I passed the test of impulsive desire. But why did you kill him without asking anything? At least let him explain. As he spoke, he looked at the dark red marks on the ground with lingering fear. He still hadn't calmed down. Crazy Ol said, "My boy, some things don't need to be asked. What you need to learn is not only magic or body arts, but also how to see the world clearly. Otherwise, what's the use of strength? Ferocious beasts have great strength. Do you want to be as ignorant as a wild beast?" Amon said, "Ignorant? I just want to know why he came. What did he want? Did he want to catch me or kill me?" Crazy Ol pointed at the marks on the ground. To catch a kid, he didn't need to swing a hammer like that, nor did he need to use such speed and strength. That was a fatal blow. He didn't even want to ask you anything before he wanted to kill you. Perhaps he was worried that he couldn't do it, so he used the most direct method without hesitation. Amon could not help but shiver slightly. "Are you so sure?" Crazy Ol sighed again. "Maki knows you because we are neighbors in the town. He watched you grow up and we are very familiar with each other. But he didn't wear a mask today, so he didn't consider what you would do if you recognized him. That can only mean one thing. Before he came here, he didn't think that you would tell anyone about this." Amon lowered his head. "I didn't expect Maki to do this. He deserves to die, but I'm also at fault. If I didn't take out the Aquaticore to force Shog, today's disaster wouldn't have happened." Crazy Ol nodded. "You knew he was sent by Shog?" Amon said, "How could I not have thought of it after you reminded me? He didn't even wear a mask. Not only to rob, but also to kill. So it must be Shog's order. Maki is Shog's servant." Crazy Ol came to Amon and patted his back, as if to comfort him. "You said you were at fault, but that's your own business. It has nothing to do with what happened to Maki. For him, you did nothing wrong. You could have killed him or not. But if you want to forgive someone's crime for some reason, you have to understand two things." Amon looked up. "What are they?" Crazy Ol answered slowly. "First, you have to understand that when anyone makes a choice, he also has to face the consequences, whether he is willing or not. Take Maki for example. Since he decided to do what he did, he should bear the consequences, whether he was aware of it or not. Second, if you choose to forgive and forgive, you have to understand and be able to bear the consequences. You have to figure out whether you're resolving the grudge or bringing more harm to yourself or others. As for Maki, as a level 3 warrior, there's no way he didn't notice that you used divine arts just now. Even if he can't kill you, he'll definitely report you. You didn't do anything wrong, but he wants your life." Amon lowered his head again. "You don't have to say so much. In fact, Maki didn't have to report me. You already told me that he was a 3rd-level warrior. If I let him go, he could have killed me." Crazy Ol laughed in a self-deprecating manner. "I can't even remember how many people I've killed in my life. This is the first time I've explained so much to a child. Amon, it's the first time you've seen someone kill someone in front of you. You're much calmer than I was when I was a child. Remember what happened today. There's a first time for everything. Experience is the wealth of life." Amon looked at the ground and answered in a daze, "Maki is dead. He died of his own trap and Shog's desire. But Shog is still here. What should I do?" "Do as you see fit. Think about it. What would you do if I wasn't here?" Crazy Ol answered. Then he thought it was too hard for a child. He looked at Duke in the distance with a mocking expression. "If you're smart, you don't have to do anything. Time is precious now. It's not worth wasting it on someone like that." Amon soon understood why Crazy Ol said, "Don't have to do anything." Lord Shog was sick again, and this time it was serious. He had lost a lot of weight and looked worried all day long. He didn't come looking for trouble with Amon. Instead, he would walk around the town from time to time. When he saw Amon from afar, he would even take a detour, as if he didn't dare to see Amon. Maki was an important figure in Duk. Him disappearing into thin air caused quite a stir in the town. People talked about it. His family and neighbors looked for him everywhere, but there was no news. Maki's wife cried all day long. Worried, his family went to the shrine of Murin to pray to the goddess of Murin. No one knew if Murin heard the prayers of Maki's family, but the priest did. It was said that Shog gave Maki's family a large sum of money, which surprised and moved the townspeople. Shog almost went bankrupt to pay the tax for Amon. How could he be so kind as to give Maki another large sum of money? Because he felt guilty and scared. He didn't know what happened to Maki. Maki getting lost in the black charcoal forest, being killed by mistake, being captured and imprisoned for interrogation, being exposed and escaping. He thought of all the possibilities, and the more he thought about it, the more frightened he became, fearing that he would also be exposed. Shog was even prepared. If Maki was captured and confessed that he was the one behind it, Shog would deny it and insist that he had nothing to do with it. He would say that Maki was greedy because he saw Amon had so many parangons, so he wanted to kill Amon for his wealth. Anyway, there was no evidence. Maki's testimony could not bring down a noble like Shog. On the contrary, he would be accused of framing him. But that didn't happen. Maki disappeared like air. Mayor Dusty came to see Shog and asked if he had any clues about Maki's disappearance. Of course, Shog said he didn't know anything. He just felt that the mayor's eyes were a little strange, which made him feel uneasy. Shog wanted to know what had happened. He was the one who had sent Maki to kill Amon, but Amon had returned unscathed, as if nothing had happened. Shog didn't dare to ask Amon, for fear of exposing his guilty conscience. But he couldn't figure out how it happened. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. In the end, Shog couldn't stand it anymore. He asked for leave from the mayor and went to the city to find a better mage. He temporarily escaped from Duk. What was Amon doing during this time? He didn't have time to pay attention to Shog. Crazy Ol taught him many things. To be exact, he didn't teach him, he just instilled him with knowledge. Crazy Ol explained almost all the content of the first level magic to him. It was impossible for Amon to learn them all in such a short time, and Crazy Ol didn't ask him to. He just asked him to memorize them. No matter how good a sorcerer was, he couldn't master all the magic. But he had to understand them and know how to deal with them in different situations. On the other hand, Crazy Ol didn't know what Amon would be good at in the future. It seemed that he couldn't wait to observe, so he laid the foundation for Amon. Such a method of teaching theurgy was almost never seen in the major shrines. Amon tried his best. Only when he was in a state of concentration could he remember so many complex magic incantations. It was even more tiring than mining. In comparison, learning body arts using strength was much easier. Crazy Ol only asked Amon to memorize and understand the lower-level magic, while Amon was practicing body arts. The first level of body arts required the awakening of explosive power, which Amon had already achieved. Crazy Ol asked him to use this power. The technique of Duke's miners included the ability to release and release power at will. But from the point of view of body arts, its original purpose was to strengthen people's bodies. In reality, the most important skills were used in combat, so it was also called martial arts. Crazy Ol wasn't very good at combat, so he only asked Amon to use the branch to practice and feel how to use strength by himself. A supreme sorcerer like him didn't need to fight with swords. In fact, many mages believed that it was against their noble status to engage in rough combat. Many important combat experiences could only be mastered through actual combat. Crazy Ol couldn't teach too much. As for strength, accuracy, agility, and endurance, Amon could practice them in his spare time. Amon felt mentally exhausted. If he hadn't practiced magic a while ago, he wouldn't have been able to remember the content of the magic Crazy Ol taught him. But his body was getting stronger and stronger, and he felt more relaxed and comfortable. But after Shog left Duk, Amon suddenly fell ill. Amon had no concept of illness. He had never been sick since he was a child, so this illness came suddenly and strangely. He often felt cold and feverish, as if he had just taken a bath in a cold spring 2 years ago. What was strange was that 2 years ago he accidentally fell and hurt his leg, and 1 year ago he accidentally sprained his shoulder and back. These injuries had long since healed, but now they seemed to be acting up again. The old injuries were always aching, and it was unbearable. He tried not to show it on the surface, because he didn't want his father to worry. But secretly, he was suffering. When he practiced body arts, he almost couldn't control the iron rod accurately. Crazy Ol cast a healing spell on him. An 8th level sorcerer's healing spell could only relieve Amon's pain, but it couldn't cure the illness. All kinds of minor ailments kept acting up. Amon didn't know what was wrong with him. He wasn't afraid, but he was worried. Crazy Ol, on the other hand, seemed happy. Crazy Ol saw through Amon's worry. One day, he finally smiled and said, "My boy, it must be hard these days, right? Speaking of which, I have to thank you. From you, I have confirmed a conclusion I've made for many years. And you didn't let me down. You faced a new test so soon." Amon didn't understand. What conclusion? What test? I remember you once said that the first test to become a mage is the awakening of desire, and the next test to reach the peak of primary magic is the firmness of faith. That has nothing to do with my current situation. Crazy Ol shook his head. It's not just a test for mages. Since you've awakened the power of 2 sides, you're also facing a test of 2 sides. I call it the purity of body. It's something you'll encounter when practicing body arts, but it's often overlooked. There's no clear record of it in the classics. Before I explain it, listen to my experience. It is a lesson learned from countless casualties. Chapter 20. Nietzsche had traveled to many city-states on the continent and experienced many wars. When he became a supreme sorcerer, he observed many wars in an almost cruel way. He secretly made cold and meticulous statistics of casualties and discovered a problem that had been overlooked. The death rate of a level 1 swordsman seemed to be a little higher after going through a long and continuous battle. Although it was lower than that of an ordinary warrior, it was clearly much higher than that of a level 2 swordsman. This was not proportional to the difference in strength between them. For example, in a war involving tens of thousands of people, Nietzsche calculated that the casualty rate for ordinary warriors reached 35%, the casualty rate for first-level warriors reached 20%, the casualty rate for second-level warriors was only 7%, and the casualty rate for third-level warriors was only 5%. This result was obviously abnormal. As practitioners of body arts of the same level, the difference in strength between a first-level warrior and a second-level warrior was not that big, and the difference in fighting skills was even smaller. Crazy Ol continued to study this problem, looking for battlefields. He went wherever there was a large-scale bloody conflict. He was like a bloodthirster. Gradually, he discovered a detail. First-level warriors who were well-versed in controlling their strength were prone to illness after a long period of fighting. They were troubled by all kinds of diseases and injuries, and even old injuries that had existed for a long time. This was easily overlooked in the cruel environment of the battlefield. If they relied on their extraordinary willpower, strong physique, and a little bit of luck, these people would often advance to the second rank of swordsmen if they managed to pull through. Crazy Ol followed this clue and did more research. He found that second-level warriors would be troubled by physical factors before they could advance. Most people thought this was a normal phenomenon in the practice of body arts. Ordinary people's bodies could not adapt to the extraordinary strength, and they needed a strong will to persist in training until they reached the second level of body arts. Only then could they strengthen their bodies to adapt. This view was not wrong, but no one noticed the unusual regularity. Crazy Ol, however, concluded that this was an inevitable test in the practice of body arts, which manifested in the exposure of all the hidden injuries in the body. If one's body was not strong enough, he could not pass this test. But if he appeared on the battlefield, the situation would be serious. It was not just a matter of passing the test. First-level warriors who rushed to the front line were naturally not nobles. They were all civilians who were lucky enough to practice body arts and were recruited to the front line. They had to appear in the fiercest places of battle, and they needed military achievements to change their status. Therefore, the high number of casualties did not attract too much attention. Crazy Ol called this test, the purity of the body. Thinking of all the tests one had to face in the process of practicing magic, Crazy Ol guessed that there must be something in common and regular. He told his student Bear about it. Now, through the results of Bale's research, he had awakened the power of two sides in Amon and confirmed it with this child. Crazy Ol's words enlightened Amon. He no longer worried about his condition. After all, this was not the first time he had been tested on a battlefield. Crazy Ol added, "You have to pass this test before the disaster comes. I was worried if you could make it in time. I didn't expect you to take this step. I'm relieved now." Crazy Ol mentioned the disaster again. Amon couldn't help but ask, "What disaster? Isn't Maki's death a disaster? His neighbor was killed in front of him." The disturbance in the town and the tears and worries of Maki's family were already a disaster in Amon's eyes. Crazy Ol shook his head, "Now is not the time to tell you. You will soon face another disaster. The day of your departure from Duk is coming." Amon was surprised. "Leave Duk? That is not allowed by the town law. And I'm not a supreme sorcerer yet. And what about my father?" Crazy Ol sighed, "Don't worry about that. It's useless. Everyone here has his own destiny, and you have yours. In fact, from the moment you extracted the god's tear and Faal claimed that you offered it to the goddess Isis, you were destined to be punished by the kingdom." Amon did not understand, the kingdom's punishment. Crazy Ol sneered, "Dusty and Shog will pretend that they don't know, so they won't be held responsible. It was you who offered the god's tear to the goddess Isis. But now Maria should have arrived at the temple of Isis and become the adoratress. The news of how she got the god's tear in Duk must have been made public. The Hittite kingdom will not protest in public, nor will they pursue the matter. But there must be people who are dissatisfied in secret. A miner extracted the god's tear but did not report it according to the law. Instead, he offered it to the shrine of the neighboring Hittite kingdom. This is a serious crime. If we don't punish him, how can we prevent similar things from happening again? If we can't punish Rod Dick, why can't we punish you?" Amon frowned, "How will the kingdom punish me?" Crazy Ol said, "Find another crime. You will be beheaded if you violate some law or oracle. Otherwise, how can you warn the others? That's easy to figure out." Amon took a deep breath. "Decapitation. When?" Crazy Ol said, "Rod Dick hasn't left Hittite yet. I'm afraid the news will get out. But to punish you, we have to wait until the news of the adoratress' ascension to the throne is announced. Then an emissary will be sent from the capital. It should take more than 2 months. Soon. But you don't have to worry about being beheaded. I have some old friends here. I will arrange your departure in advance. Start preparing for your long journey now. Don't tell anyone." Amon's expression changed to one of panic and helplessness. "Am I going to leave Duk? Leaving my father and you?" He was just a boy who had never traveled far. He did not know what to do when he heard the news. Crazy Ol patted him on the shoulder and said, "My child, you will grow up one day. I have taught you so much. Do you think it's just for you to be a clerk in Duk? The world is big. Don't forget your promise to me. Unravel the secrets of the gods. As for here, I will arrange everything. When the storm is over, you can come back." Amon said, "I can come back. Well, that's good. But I..." Crazy Ol interrupted him, "But you haven't learned more, have you? I will try my best to record everything I know and give it to you. The rest is up to you. I not only want you to unravel the secrets of the gods, but also to prove this path yourself. So I don't want you to take the wrong path. I have already taken the wrong path. Even if I become a 9th-level sorcerer, it will be the end. Now, I want to remind you of 3 things. You must remember them, and don't ask why. Amon was a little stunned. Tell me, I will. The 3 things Crazy Owl told him were very special. First, no matter how strong Amon would become in the future, he should try not to kill people directly. It was not that he could not kill people, but he should try to avoid killing people directly. There was a big difference between the two. If he had to hurt people directly, including living beings, he should try to use as little force as possible to achieve the same effect. Second, no matter how big the disaster was, he should try not to make people hate him. If it was inevitable to make some people hate him directly, then he should make more people feel grateful to him and respect him from the bottom of their hearts. Third, if the above 2 points brought him confusion and went against his beliefs, or if he had no choice between life and death and had to kill people directly, he could stop thinking about it and not feel conflicted. It was easy to remember these 3 points, but difficult to understand. Amon blinked his eyes and thought for a long time. Since Crazy Owl did not allow him to ask why, he asked another question. You want me to avoid killing people directly, but why did you kill Maki that day and use so much force? There seemed to be a deep helplessness in Crazy Owl's eyes. These are the things I want you to remember. As for me, it doesn't matter anymore. Child, do these 3 points give you any sense of familiarity? Amon shook his head. I can't remember. It's the first time I've heard of it. Crazy Owl said, it's also the first time I've told someone this. It was mentioned in Bear's message, but he didn't explain why. Amon, give me that branch of yours for a few days. I need to rework it. Crazy Owl changed the topic. The branch was, of course, Amon's iron rod. Amon gave the rod to Crazy Owl. When he got home, he thought about what they talked about today. He was not only worried about the disaster in the future, but also curious and yearning. He was silently preparing for the long journey. In fact, there was nothing to prepare. He did not know where he was going, and he was more concerned about what would happen to his drunkard father after he left. He had to take the aquaticore with him, and he planned to keep the other 20 parangons, enough for his father to use for several years. Crazy Owl promised to take care of things here. After all, he could come back again, so there was no need to worry too much. The 3 things Crazy Owl told him to remember were mentioned in Bear's message, but when he recalled Bear's message last time, he did not mention them. It seemed that at least he did not tell Amon everything. What else did he keep? A few days later, Amon's illness was cured. All the ailments disappeared naturally. That night, Amon was sitting at home. For some reason, he felt that every muscle and every pore in his body was so comfortable. Even his every breath was so joyful. This was the body that truly belonged to him. Only in this way could he use the awakened power in his bloodline without any awkwardness. He had passed the test of body purity, and his body arts had advanced to the 2nd level. According to Crazy Owl, Amon should continue to practice 2nd-level magic. Amon wanted to go to the charcoal forest, but since that was the case, he went to Crazy Owl's house to tell him the news and ask him how to practice 2nd-level magic. When he came to the gate of Crazy Owl's yard, he felt something was wrong, as if there was an invisible force blocking the gate. As soon as Amon touched the force, he heard a voice in his ear. Mr. Nietzsche, is the man outside the boy you were talking about? It was the voice of an old man, not from the town. Then Amon heard Crazy Owl's voice in his ear. Yes, Goliath, he is Amon. It turned out that Crazy Owl had a guest, Goliath. Amon had never heard of this name. Amon only heard the question and the answer, and then there was no sound. The force in front of the gate had no intention of letting him in. Obviously, Crazy Owl and Goliath didn't want Amon to hear what they were talking about, nor did he want him to disturb them. Amon stood in the corner of the yard and waited quietly. Not knowing what Crazy Owl and the guest were talking about, Amon suddenly heard Goliath's voice saying agitatedly, Nietzsche, please don't offend the gods in front of me. I have my beliefs, my principles. Please stop talking about the prophecy of the catastrophe. Chapter 21. Perhaps Goliath was too excited that his voice broke through Crazy Ole's barrier. Ammon could not hear the rest of the conversation. Only the two of them in the room could hear it. Crazy Ole sat there with a goblet of wine in his hand. He made a downward gesture. You don't have to believe me, but when the day comes, I hope you will remember what I said and be prepared for it. Let's not talk about this. I've been living in Duk all these years and we've been living in harmony. I've even helped you a little, am I right? Goliath bowed. When I first met you, I was only a 5th level mage. You didn't cause me any trouble. You even helped me a few times and gave me many pointers. Otherwise, I wouldn't have become a supreme mage so smoothly. From a personal point of view, I've always been grateful to you. There's no doubt about that. Crazy Ole actually had moments of modesty. He waved his hand and smiled. You don't have to thank me for what you've achieved. I've only told you some of my experiences. You've also let me read many books in the shrine. I'm grateful to you as well. But today, what do you think about a little favor? Goliath was silent for a while. Then he sighed and answered, no problem. We both know that the boy is innocent. I'm afraid the whole continent knows that. Dusty is a smart man. It's easy. The emissary from the capital will come in 3 days. Crazy Ole stood up. Then let's go to him. I'll go with you. He won't dare to disobey you, and he won't dare to tell anyone about what happened today. Goliath smiled. When the time comes, I naturally won't ignore him. When they were about to leave, Crazy Ole suddenly said, Goliath, although you don't want me to say it, I have to say it one last time. If the catastrophe really comes, I hope you can survive. Don't throw away your life needlessly, and don't give up on your faith. I know what you've achieved. You will become a 9th level mage. Goliath stood still in front of the door. After a moment of silence, he said, do you have anything else to say? Crazy Ole thought for a moment. If Ammon comes back one day, I hope you can comfort him and help him if you allow it. Ammon didn't know how long he had been standing in the corner. Suddenly, the gate of Crazy Ole's house opened and 2 people walked out. The guest was an old man with a goatee. He couldn't see very clearly in the dark, but the old man glanced at him. His eyes were quite clear and sharp in the darkness. Ammon wanted to take a step forward, but he couldn't help but stand there without making a sound. Crazy Ole and Goliath went to the mayor's house, the building where Maria used to live. Why did they go to the mayor so late at night? Ammon looked at the building from afar. There seemed to be light on the 2nd floor, but it didn't look like a light. Soon after, he opened his mouth wide in shock. He clearly saw a figure fly out of the window. The figure was like a big bird, a giant eagle, or a night owl. It rushed into the sky and disappeared into the night. It was flying. It looked like the guest, Goliath. Crazy Ole, who is the guest today? He can fly. This was Ammon Ole's question. At this time, Crazy Ole had returned from the mayor's house. Crazy Ole smiled, it's nothing. I can fly too. Otherwise, how could I have the chance to watch the battle? But I think it's too tiring. It's more comfortable to walk. An 8th level sorcerer like me can fly without the help of any magic artifacts. In fact, an advanced mage can fly, but he needs the help of some things. It was Ammon Ole's habit to get to the bottom of something. He asked again, you haven't told me who Goliath is. Don't worry. You'll know sooner or later. If one day you run into trouble in Saya, maybe you can go to him. Ammon, why did you come to see me at night? Ammon said, I've passed the test of body purity. Generally speaking, I'm a 2nd level warrior. But according to you, I should learn 2nd level magic. But I'm not a 2nd level sorcerer yet. How can I learn it? Crazy Ole looked at Ammon and said in a low voice, if I'm right, you're not only a 2nd level warrior, but you can also learn magic and become a second-level sorcerer. Whether it's true or not, you'll know once you try. Amon said, but you haven't taught me second-level magic yet. Crazy Ol smiled again. There's no such thing as second-level magic, only low-level magic. I've taught you almost all of them. You are a qualified first-level mage if you are able to combine magic with different techniques. You can't be any more outstanding than that. The ability to use two different kinds of low-level magic separately to enhance the power of the magic was the standard of a second-level mage in the shrine. Go and test yourself. Take this branch back and these 3 parangons. Crazy Ol reached out his hand and pulled Amon's iron branch out of thin air. His other hand grabbed at the air and 3 different colored parangons appeared. He put them on the table in front of Amon. Looking at Amon's shocked face, Crazy Ol smiled again. The red one is called Flame Sprite, the black one is called Taraculus, the white one is called Ventussum. Together with the Aquaticor I gave you, you have all 4 of them. Don't be surprised. 100 years old supreme sorcerer who has been a miner in Turco for so many years, it's normal for him to have all these. Take them with you and try out their different uses yourself. Explore and practice other divine arts. Amon thought for a moment. Crazy Ol's words made sense. Crazy Ol had been a miner in Turco for more than 100 years. As a supreme sorcerer, it was easy for him to collect all these things. For people like Crazy Ol, money was not important. Things depended on what they were used for. Giving them to Amon to practice magic was the most important thing. So Amon did not refuse. He carefully picked them up and put them away. Then he picked up the stick and looked at it for a long time. Nothing changed. It looked more like a branch. Seeing that Crazy Ol was looking at him with a faint smile, Amon was tempted. He tried to touch the stick by awakening his divine power. It felt different in some places. So he used his hands to break every knob on the stick. Finally, he found that there was a hidden mechanism in the wood grain. It required a lot of strength to open. Amon's fingers were almost sore. He found 4 grooves in the stick, and each groove could fit a parangan. Amon asked hesitantly, "Is this a magic wand?" Crazy Ol nodded and took the stick. Sorcerers and mages use the same wand. But as a young low-rank sorcerer, holding a wand is like announcing your identity to everyone. It's no different from seeking death. So I changed this stick into a wand. The material of the wand has been changed, but it can still be used as a weapon. It took me a lot of effort to set the parangan. I even destroyed the parangan to cover it with a complete shell. It's hard to tell that it's a wand unless you're a supreme sorcerer. Even a 9th-level sorcerer won't notice it if he's not paying attention, as long as you don't use the wand to cast magic in front of them. There are 5 grooves in total. The 4 hidden grooves on the body of the wand can be set with all kinds of parangons. Of course, you can set all 4 parangons in it. It's the most versatile way. There's also a very hidden groove on the head of the wand. Even if you know it, you won't be able to open it unless you're an advanced warrior and an advanced sorcerer at the same time. I can't even open it after I finished the work. I'm afraid only the gods can find it. If possible, this groove is for you to set the god's tear in the future. If you set the god's tear in the wand, you can't set other parangons in the other 4 grooves. You have to set the Aquaticor, the Flame Sprite, the Taraculus, and the Ventussalamander in sequence. It's the same structure as the wand of the Sentinel of Isis, but it looks different and the effect may be different. You know I'm a supreme sorcerer, but you don't know that I'm probably the best craftsman on the continent. The twig in your hand is the proudest work of my life. Crazy Ol finished his speech in one breath. His hands caressed the iron wand, and his face showed a little bit of pride. If it were an ordinary mage who saw these crystals and this wand, his jaw would probably drop. However, Amon had been shocked too many times recently. His nerves were tough and he was very calm. He stood up and said only 3 words, "Thank you." Crazy Ol waved his hand. It's hard to say who should thank whom more. It's me who led you to the most difficult path in the world. Amon, so what? Do you think I'm not willing? Do you want me to be a miner like my father for the rest of my life, never leaving Duk? Maybe one of my fingers has already been cut off. Crazy Ol looked at Amon, as if he was studying something. Amon, you are a child who can hide things in your heart, just like this iron stick can hide a parangan. No one can tell it's a staff. But you've had a question for a long time. It's about me. Tell me today. I can read your eyes when you look at these parangons. Amon lowered his head. In that case, I'll ask. The ore core used to mine the god's tear was borrowed from you by my father. That's why I've been through so much. And you said that from the moment I mined the god's tear, many things were bound to happen. Did you do it on purpose? I knew it was the god's tear in the ore core. Amon finally asked the question that had been bothering him for a long time. Crazy Ol was a little embarrassed. He looked down at the iron wand and said, among all the supreme sorcerers and mages, I should be the one who knows the most about mining parangons. No one else could have been a miner in Duk for more than 100 years. The ore core is a magical thing. Before it's opened, no one can be sure that there is a parangan in it, let alone what kind of parangons it is. I've spent my whole life trying to figure it out. All I know is that the ore core is different from the others I'm familiar with. It's probably the god's tear that I've never mined before. I lent it to your father and you opened it. It's the god's tear. I'm right. Amon hesitated, then why didn't you? Crazy Ol continued, then why didn't I keep it for myself? The god's tear is no longer of much use to me. Besides, it's Bear who kidnapped the adoratress of the temple of Isis and took away the god's tear. It's all because of me. I'll just return the god's tear and the adoratress. Besides, if I didn't let you mine the god's tear, how could I carry out my plan? You're right, I did it on purpose. Amon didn't ask further. He just nodded and said, oh, I see. Crazy Ol pointed to the black parangan and said, special crystals have more than one use. For example, this Taraculus is the best auxiliary artifact for using earth magic. It can also support some strength-based magic, and it can also be used as a carrier for message magic. I have written down all the information I know about cultivation in the form of a magic scroll. You can read it slowly. But the message magic I use has a special feature. Only when your magic reaches a certain level can you read the contents of the scrolls. After that, the recorded information will disappear automatically. Then he pointed to the white parangan and said, the Ventusulum is not only the best auxiliary artifact for air magic, but also one of the best carriers for spatial magic. But sometimes it needs to be modified. I've had this Ventusulum for many years. I've made it into a spatial artifact. It can hold many things, but now it's empty. If one day you become a 6th level sorcerer and can use supreme spatial magic, you can open it and use it. Amon interrupted, isn't the 6th level an advanced sorcerer? How can you use supreme magic? Crazy Ol smiled, it's not just supreme mages who can use supreme magic. In fact, all kinds of magic can be performed with the help of auxiliary tools. But the measure of a supreme mage is another matter. In fact, the evaluation criteria for a 6th level mage was not only to pass the test of Devil's Temptation, but also to be able to use supreme magic with the help of props, or to perform at least one supreme magic without any props, and so on. It's too early to talk to you about this. The Taraculus contains all the information. You'll know when you can see it. Amon suddenly felt that there was something wrong with Crazy Ol's behavior today. It was as if he wanted to explain everything at once. He couldn't help but ask, what's wrong with you today? Am I leaving immediately? Crazy Ol, poor child, you're so smart. You'll be banished tomorrow morning. Today is your last night in Duk. There are a few things I'll tell you tomorrow when I send you off. Now I want to ask, have I ever said that you're my student, and have you ever called me teacher? Only now did Amon realize that he had never called Nietzsche teacher. He had always called him Crazy Ole, not because he was disrespectful, but because he had been used to it since he was a child. Hearing this, he hurriedly stood up, knelt down and kissed the soil in front of Crazy Ole's feet. Then he said, "Teacher Nietzsche, in my heart, you're already my teacher. Of course I'm your student." Crazy Ole did not stop Amon from performing the most solemn ceremony. Instead, he laughed and said, "Amon, if one day you can unravel the secrets of the gods, or even become a god, then today's scene will be very memorable. Or rather, it will be very ironic. I've recorded this scene in the Taraculus. Child, you don't have to call me teacher. In fact, I haven't taught you much, and I don't want you to become my student or another me. I just want you to fulfill my wish. It seems that no one can teach you this. Sorry to trouble you." Amon replied respectfully, "I won't forget." Crazy Ole seemed to be full of emotion. "Who can tell whether you'll forget or not? I've recorded 2 pieces of information in the Taraculus that will never disappear. One is the scene of you kneeling in front of me. As for the other, it's related to Maria. Do you want to take a look?" Amon was curious. "Maria? I want to see it." Crazy Ole said, "You haven't practiced message magic yet. Let me show you first." Before his voice trailed off, Amon saw the black crystal on the table become colorless and transparent. Its edges and corners glowed, turning into a dodecahedral light ball. Then the light ball expanded, and a 3-dimensional image appeared in it. It was a line of Igut's cursive writing on the wall, "Amon, my name is Eco." Seeing Amon's puzzled look, Crazy Ole explained with a smile, "That's what Maria wrote in her room. She wanted to tell you her name, but she didn't. She just wrote it in a corner of the room, but later erased it. This is probably the last time she uses this name, and the last time she writes in the secular world. Do you think she has forgotten, or is it hard for her to forget? I'm afraid even the gods can't tell." The next day, when the people were still having breakfast, the bell in the shrine of Murin rang again. When the people hurriedly ate their food and rushed to the square in front of the shrine, they found that this time the bell was rung by Dusty himself. The mayor looked very solemn. Seeing that almost everyone had arrived, Mayor Dusty opened a scroll and read aloud, "This is an irrevocable decree jointly issued by the Empire of Igut and the Hittite Kingdom. Every region of Saya should send warriors to help hunt down the evil sorcerer bear. He was last seen in the jungle of the Euphrates River, west of the town of Duk in Saya." Here, Dusty closed the scroll, paused, and continued, "Bear is an evil sorcerer. His pursuers must be real warriors. He escaped from the temple of Isis in Igut to the jungle of the Euphrates River. Those who can find and kill him must be blessed by the goddess Isis and Murin. Finally, such a warrior has appeared in our town. I've decided to send him to carry out the decree of the Hittite kingdom." Shog was not here. Except for Crazy Ole and Amon, only Mayor Dusty could read. No one noticed that the parchment in his hand was very old. It was a decree from 30 years ago. Chapter 22. 30 years ago, when the Empire of Igut learned that Bear had crossed the border of the Cape States and fled across the Saya Desert to the Euphrates Valley, not only did the Empire of Igut mobilize a group of mages and warriors to pursue him, but it also issued an official document requesting the Hittite kingdom, especially the city-states near the Euphrates Valley, to assist in the hunt. So the Hittite kingdom issued a decree and symbolically sent it to all the states. This was more or less a perfunctory one. It only asked the states to send warriors to pursue Bear, but it did not say what would happen if they did not send warriors. Everyone knew that sending warriors to hunt down a 9th-level sorcerer was not a good idea. Even if they did find him, it would be no different from suicide. It had nothing to do with them. The most they could do was to send a message to their superiors. The town of Duk also received the decree. How could they have any information about Bear? It was impossible for them to send blacksmiths to hunt down a supreme sorcerer. So they did not take any action. Of course, no one would pursue the matter. Later on, the temple of Isis announced that Bear had been killed by Trony, but the authorities were very secretive about the matter. No one was willing to mention Bear's name again. So the matter was over and became history. Unfortunately, there was a tale that no one noticed. The decree issued by the Hittite kingdom was irrevocable, and they forgot to revoke it later. In fact, no one needed to do anything else. The matter was over. No one would go after a supreme sorcerer who had disappeared a long time ago. What was more interesting was that the town of Duk only received the decree to assist in the pursuit of Bear. The empire of Iga did not inform the Hittite kingdom that Bear had been killed, and the Hittite kingdom naturally did not spread the announcement that had nothing to do with them. In theory, the town of Duk knew nothing about it. But in fact, the people of Duk did not know anything about it. They had never heard of the decree 30 years ago. Except for Crazy Ole, no one even knew who Bear was. Today, however, Dusty had publicly announced the decree, and it was still in effect. The townsfolk were surprised. Who was Baal? Judging from the mayor's words, it seemed that it was a sorcerer who was wanted by the Egyptian Empire and the Hittite kingdom. He must be a very difficult person to deal with. With so many mages and warriors, was there a need to send someone from a small town like Duk? Why was the mayor so enthusiastic? Even if he wanted to flatter her, there was no need to use this kind of thing to show off, right? While they were looking at each other and whispering to each other, Crazy Ole Nietzsche stepped forward and asked, "Mayor, you said that there is such a brave warrior in our town. Who is he?" Dusty pointed at someone in the crowd expressionlessly and said, "The one who is blessed by the gods. We have all witnessed the miracle with our own eyes. We know how the patron saint blessed him. He is Amon." As soon as Amon heard the mayor read out the decree, he immediately understood what was going on. Crazy Ole, Goliath and Dusty had discussed it last night. They wanted to find an excuse to make him leave the town, or exile him. But the others did not understand. Someone immediately shouted, "What? Amon! The mayor wants to send a child to kill a sorcerer. Preposterous, absolutely preposterous. Not to mention killing a sorcerer, even sending a child to a dangerous jungle was ridiculous." If it were not Mayor Dusty who said this, the people would have already cursed him. Mayor Dusty asked coldly, "Oh, so you're the one who's going?" This sentence dispelled most of the questioning voices, but there was one person who walked out shakily and knelt down in front of the mayor. "Sir, please send me." This man was Amon's father. It was rare that he did not drink too much today. Mayor Dusty looked at him and asked emotionlessly, "Are you a warrior? Have you ever received special favor from the Sentinel Goddess?" "I'm sorry, but I've decided. I will send Amon." Amon's father's lips trembled. He wanted to say something, but Amon and Crazy Ole helped him up and whispered something in his ear. He was shocked to hear this, but he nodded in the end. So it was decided. Amon, as the warrior of Duk, would go deep into the jungle to hunt down the evil sorcerer Bear and carry out the decree of the kingdom. The mayor only gave Amon 2 hours to go home and pack up. No one was allowed to see him out of the town. As a supervisor, Dusty accompanied Amon home after the crowd dispersed. In Amon's memory, it was the first time that the mayor had stepped into his yard. Amon was the warrior chosen by Duk, so he deserved the honor. The mayor gave him a bag of money and a knife in the name of the whole town. Warriors also needed to spend money to buy things. At the same time, they also needed weapons. The saber given to Amon by the mayor was naturally made of fine iron. It was both sharp and tough, resistant to wear and tear, and not easy to break. The only drawback was that it was a little small, less than a foot long. It would be better to use it to skin the prey than to hunt down the sorcerer. Amon did not have many things with him. He only brought the twig and 2 leather bags. One small bag could hold valuables, and the other big bag could carry a lot of things on his shoulder. He wanted to leave the 20 parangons he had with him to his father, but his father insisted that he take half of them with him. He would need money if he went out. Mayor Dusty said, "The town should pay for Amon's expenses." I've brought the bag of money. Amon's father opened the bag and found 5 parangons, 5 gold, 10 silver, and dozens of copper coins. Amon took a look and took out the 5 parangons. Father, these are for you. I'll take the rest. His father shook his head. You'd better take all the parangons. It's more convenient. Dusty couldn't help but interrupt. Old drunkard, you don't know much about the outside world. In many village pubs, a glass of wine costs only 1 copper coin. If you pay with a parangon, you can even buy a pub. You have to bring change. It's convenient and less troublesome. A parangon was equivalent to 20 gold baht. The weight of a gold coin on the continent was 1 stok, and the weight of a silver and copper coin was half a baht. A gold coin was worth 20 silver coins, and a silver coin was worth 100 copper coins. If a glass of wine was sold for 1 copper coin, and Amon paid with a parangon, the pub would have to give him 39,999 copper coins. Amon's father's jaw dropped. It cost him a silver coin to buy a bottle of wine in Duk. His small glass could only hold 5 glasses at most. He was stunned for a long time before he said, My son, you really should go out. Mayor Dusty left. Amon and his father split the money. In the end, Amon only took the bag of money given by the mayor and left the 20 parangons to his father. Hearing Dusty's words, his father gave Amon another 30 silver coins. That was the money Judah gave him last time. Crazy, Ol and Amon both told the drunkard that the mayor was just looking for an excuse to let Amon leave the town because Shog wanted to get back at Amon. Everything was arranged and there was nothing to worry about. He would come back after a while. When only the father and son were left in the house, Amon didn't know what they said to each other. When Amon left, there was an extra bottle of wine in his backpack. It was his father's best wine. The Dushans saw Amon off at the eastern entrance of the town as if he was a warrior. They watched him walk on a winding path in the forest. This trail was left behind by people who usually went hunting, and there were also people who went to the edge of the mountains near the town to pick wild fruits and vegetables. Further into the depths were towering mountains with dense vegetation that blocked out the sun. The Euphrates River ran through the mountains, about 200 miles away from Duk. Cavemen lived in the mountains. They were also called dwarfs in the kingdom of Babylon. But Amon heard from Crazy Ol that they were no different from the Dushans. The only difference was that they lived in a harsh environment and lived in an uncivilized state. That was why most of them looked short. Amon knew that Crazy Ol was right. In fact, there were also cavemen in Duk. They came out of the mountains to trade with the townsfolk. They could often get the best iron ore and fine iron sand. They also knew that these things were what the townsfolk liked the most. The cavemen who came to the town to trade were the smartest. They could speak the language of the continent, but they did not know many words. The mines in the north of Duk even hired strong cavemen to help them mine the ore. They were good miners and had learned a lot after living here for a long time. They were almost no different from the residents of Duk. They did not look like cavemen at all. However, most of the cavemen living in the mountains were still barbaric and ignorant. They often attacked other tribes and passers-by. Sometimes it was very dangerous. The townspeople went hunting in the mountains in the east and rarely went into the wild. Except for Crazy Ol, no one had ever reached the Euphrates River in 100 years. Amon did not know where he was going. What Crazy Ol told him last night was just an excuse for him to leave Duk. But the road led him deep into the mountains. Amon walked without hesitation. He looked around as if he was waiting for someone to show up. Crazy Ol had told him that he had a few last things to tell him before he left. Amon did not see Crazy Ol or Mayor Dusty among the people who saw him off. The path meandered along the steep mountain. There were tall trees in the distance. Even in the hot weather, it was still cool under the shade of the trees. Sunlight scattered on the path. Lush bushes grew by the roadside. Many of them had thorns, and some of them were wild flowers of unknown colors. The surroundings were quiet, but there was always a sense of danger. Occasionally, the birds chirped in the distance, but it was so pleasant. Anyone who walked alone in the deep mountains would have such a feeling. Aman had walked for a long time. When he looked back, he could no longer see the town of Duk. Lush forests surrounded him. The road under his feet became more and more rugged and difficult to recognize. Turning a pass and coming to a small slope, he saw two people standing under a tree. Mayor Dusty and Crazy Ole were waiting for him. Aman went up to them and said, "My lord, Mr. Nietzsche, were you waiting for me? What else do you want to tell me?" Crazy Ole had told Aman yesterday not to call him teacher, so today in front of Dusty, Aman called him Mr. Nietzsche. Crazy Ole did not speak. He just stared at Dusty. Schrödinger was squatting lazily at his feet. Dusty coughed and took out something. "Aman, you are a brave warrior of our town. You deserve a reward. This is a personal gift from me. It's not convenient to show it in front of others." Crazy Ole added indifferently, "This is a personal gift from Roderick to Mayor Dusty, as a token of appreciation for the god's tier in Duk. I think it's reasonable for Mayor Dusty to give it to you. He received a lot of things from Duk, but you only got 30 silver coins and almost lost a finger." Since there was no one else present, Crazy Ole spoke bluntly. It was the first time that Aman saw the mayor blush. The mayor handed over 2 certificates in an exquisite waterproof leather case, signed and issued by Roderick, the governor and chief priest of the city of Cape of the Egyptian Empire. The certificates were written on high-grade Igut papyrus, which was made from a kind of grass growing on the banks of the Nile River. It was the most convenient writing material and one of the most important exports of the Empire of Igut to other parts of the continent. The high-grade papyrus that Aman saw was usually used to write official documents of the empire. Aman was literate and could recognize that one of them was a certificate of identity for Egyptian citizens, but the column for the name was blank. At the very end, the signature of Roderick and the seal of Straits City were correct. Whoever got it and wrote their name on it was equivalent to obtaining the citizenship of the Empire of Igut. Roderick actually gave such a certificate to Dusty. It was very precious. Dusty himself had already obtained the citizenship of the Empire of Igut, but this certificate could be given away. It was a great gift. Roderick was very considerate in leaving such a certificate. As for how Dusty would deal with it, it was none of his business. The other certificate was a border pass of the Empire of Igut, which was the most useful for merchants. Every country needed a pass issued by a city at the border, or they might not be able to pass the border. If they were unlucky, they might even be caught as spies. Obviously, this was left for Dusty himself, so that he could do some private business. At this moment, under Crazy Ole's incitement or coercion, Dusty also gave it to Aman. "My child, the emissary from the capital will come to Duk in 3 days with the decision to punish you in public. I found an excuse to let you go. With these 2 things, your identity will not be a problem. The road ahead will be difficult and dangerous. Take care of yourself. Don't thank me. In fact, I should thank you. If you hadn't mined the god's tier, I wouldn't have received so many gifts. Even Shog has made a fortune. If there's anything else, you can talk to Mr. Nietzsche. I'm going back to town. I'll see if anyone follows me." Dusty left, leaving Crazy Ole and Aman alone. Crazy Ole looked at his back and said, "Dusty is a good man. You should thank him. Although he has gained a lot because of you, it's only right for him to give these to you. There are many things a man can do or not do. Some things should be done, but he has to pay a certain price. As long as he does it for you, you should be grateful. My child, you must remember this." Aman nodded. "I'll keep that in mind. Is there anything else I can do for you?" Crazy Ole pointed at Schrödinger at his feet. "Take this cat with you." Chapter 23. Aman was a boy who had never been far from home. He didn't even know what to do by himself. Crazy Ole asked him to take a cat with him. Cats were not as obedient as dogs, and they could not be taken away at will. He asked awkwardly, "Why do you want me to take Schrödinger with me? Can it go with me?" "What crazy Ole said next surprised Amon again. "Schrödinger has been with me for 30 years. Except for the message Magic Bear cast on him, I have never heard him bark. He hasn't changed at all. I can't even hug him. But he didn't leave. He has been staying in Duk. Just now, he suddenly came with me. Maybe he was waiting for this day." "Amon, this is not an ordinary cat. Schrödinger can be your guide. I haven't told you about his extraordinary origin." Amon asked in surprise, "What's his origin? Is there anything else you haven't told me?" This cat was incredible. The fact that he hadn't changed for 30 years and never made a sound was beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. Crazy Ole did not answer. Instead, he asked another question, "Do you know where you are going?" Amon looked at the 2 documents in his hand and said, "Isn't it the Empire of Igut? You must have asked the mayor to give it to me. With it, I can cross the desert to Igut." Crazy Ole shook his head, "No, it's for your future. I didn't ask the mayor to announce the decree just to make up an excuse. I really want you to find Bear. Think about it. Who is most likely to find the place where Bear was last seen?" Amon pointed at the cat on the ground. "Of course it's Schrödinger. But you haven't been able to get him to take you there for so many years. How can I do it? Maybe he has forgotten. Is there anything else you want to tell me that you haven't told me? At this time, please say it all at once." Crazy Ole glanced at Schrödinger and said, "Then I'll tell you everything. Bear took not only the adoratress and the god's tear from the shrine of Isis, but also a sacred relic and a cat according to the secret information I've gathered over the years. The Temple of Isis had once issued a secret order to retrieve these 2 items. Only the senior priests of Igut knew about it. It was normal for the Temple of Isis to secretly search for the holy relic, and the Temple of Isis did not want the news of the lost holy relic to be made public. But why would they search for a cat, and why would Baal take the cat away? There must be something more to it. Although Bel didn't tell me, I guessed that the cat must be Schrödinger. But in the past 30 years, I have never been able to solve this riddle, and Schrödinger has never paid any attention to me. To tell you the truth, I have tried many times to find Bear's whereabouts through Schrödinger, but I have never succeeded. It seems that the cat likes you. I saw you holding it, and that is the most surprising thing I have seen in the past 30 years. Next, you should practice the 2nd level magic. The test you will face is faith. I have only explored the secrets of the gods to this point. My child, this is a difficult path. That is why I don't let you call me teacher. The path you are going to take is not something I can guide you. Obviously, Bear knows more. Finding Bear's whereabouts is the first step to unlocking the secrets of the gods. He must have left a message on how to proceed from here on out. Leave Duk to find Bear. You may succeed if you take Schrödinger with you. Don't be afraid. With your current achievements, it is not a problem for you to go through the mountains and deal with ordinary beasts or cavemen. I hope you won't regret it in the future. Crazy Ole gave a long speech and patted Amon on the shoulder. Amon bowed his head, "I'm not afraid, and I won't regret it." Crazy Ole let out a long sigh of relief. "My child, I was right about you. Now try to see if you can take Schrödinger with you. If you can, there is hope that you can find Bear." "How?" Crazy Ole stood aside. Amon took a few steps forward and turned back. Kitty, come with me." "Schrödinger. Come with me." "Good kitty, let's go." Schrödinger ignored Amon for a long time, but it just turned around and squatted down again. It seemed to be very arrogant, pointing a front paw at Amon, like a noble summoning a servant to support him. This dirty, lazy, greedy and fat cat was not small. Amon was stunned. He walked over and picked up Schrödinger. Schrödinger yawned, then curled up and fell asleep. Crazy Ole smiled bitterly and pointed at the big leather bag that Amon was wearing. Amon gently put Schrödinger into the bag. The space was just enough for the cat, and the opening was not big enough to suffocate the cat. Amon, I have one last thing to tell you. Please remember and do as I say. Don't rush to find bear. Go east from here. No matter how dangerous it is, don't look back. 3 days later, look around and wait for the highest mountain you can see. When the third layer of cloud is under your feet, find a place to practice magic. The most important ones are water and air magic. You can use the aquatic ore and ventusalt to embed them into your staff. Then you can embed the other 2 standard parangons. You've already mastered the low-level water element magic very well. With the ventusalum, it's not difficult for you to learn air element magic. But most mages tend to be proud of the wonders of power and forget how insignificant the power of their own magic is compared to the power of the elements in nature. So when you practice these 2 magic, don't try to reach the highest level. Pay attention to how to resist, use and protect yourself in the face of the elements. If you can control a drop of water, you must learn how to prevent it from being scattered in the river. You will be an excellent sorcerer when you learn this. Your second-level body arts will also reach the peak. Whether you can do this or not, don't leave the top of the mountain for now. Pay attention to the clouds in the west. When the clouds are thick and don't disperse, find a place to hide. Don't let the lightning strike you. Wait for the clouds to disperse and the thunder to stop. Then you can take Schrödinger to find bear. This is what you must remember. Crazy Ole's last words seemed to come from the sky. Amon looked up in surprise and saw that Crazy Ole had already flown away. His body brushed against the treetops like a giant bird. When he disappeared, a voice came from nowhere, Amon, if you can't find bear, kill the cat and eat it. It's all up to you. Amon walked alone through the mountains, all the way to the east. There was no road under his feet. He tried to choose the best path. With the heavy iron staff in his left hand and the sword given to him by the mayor in his right, he cut through the thistles and thorns. It was impossible to go too fast in such a terrain. The mountains were getting steeper and more complicated. The ravines between the high peaks were getting deeper and deeper. If he didn't have extraordinary stamina and quick reflexes, he wouldn't be able to go far. Occasionally, he could see some trails in the lush forest, probably made by the cavemen. Amon didn't know how powerful he was, so he avoided them as much as possible to avoid conflict. He soon understood why Crazy Ole taught him water magic first. People could go without food for days, but they couldn't go without water for a day. In the evening, Amon found a dry crevice in the mountain and prepared to rest. It was impossible to walk on this mountain path after dark. He cleaned up the surroundings and lit a campfire to cook something to eat. Then he remembered that he had no water, and he didn't bring a canteen. The water seemed to be not far away. From this side of the slope, he could hear the faint sound of running water in the deep mountain stream, but he didn't pass by it. Amon couldn't fly, so he couldn't get water from the stream under the cliff. Besides, the airflow over the stream was so complicated that even birds didn't dare to fly around. Fortunately, he could summon water elements and condense the water in the environment for his own drinking. It was convenient and clean. He wanted to take out a small pot and special beef floss from his backpack. When he opened his backpack, he heard Schrödinger burp and crawl out lazily with the smell of alcohol. He didn't bring any water, but he did bring a bottle of wine. His father gave it to him. Most of the wine transported to Duk by the merchants was of good quality. Even the most common wine cost a silver coin. His father usually bought it by the barrel. However, this bottle of wine was worth 15 silver coins. It was stored in a beautiful copper bottle. It was the best wine in Amon's house. In fact, no matter where you were on the continent, this was the best wine. Amon didn't know when the cork of the bottle was opened, but Schrödinger drank it all up. It was such a luxury to bring this cat with him. But Schrödinger didn't look ashamed at all. Didn't it know that it had drunk 15 silver coins worth of wine in one gulp? Amon couldn't argue with a cat. He used magic to condense a pot of water out of thin air and put the beef floss in it. The beef floss melted in the boiling water with a tempting aroma. It smelled like fresh beef soup. Aman took out a spoon and scooped out the beef soup. He blew on it gently and drank it. It smelled so good. Only now did he realize that he was hungry. He wasn't tired after a day of mountain walking, but he was hungry. After a few sips, he saw Schrödinger stroll over and sit opposite the fire. It raised its front paw and pointed to the trees on the left. Aman also sensed something there, but Schrödinger obviously noticed it before him. Maybe it was the instinct of a beast. But this cat didn't look like a wild beast, but it was so sensitive to the environment that even Aman couldn't compare. Aman was always calm. Although he was a little panicked and scared, he just waved the branch quietly. A fine mist immediately rose up and condensed into bone-chilling ice crystals that flew into the thicket. Immediately after, a sound was heard as it rolled over a few bushes and quickly escaped. Aman only saw a long tail swinging in the trees. It was a black-bellied python. Maybe it lived in the crack, or it was attracted by the beef soup and the fire. The python was most afraid of cold air, which would make its body stiff and slow. It was scared away by the bone-chilling ice crystals that Aman threw out. His staff was inlaid with the aquaticore, so Aman could cast magic so easily. He was also shocked. He said to Schrödinger with lingering fear, "Thank you for reminding me." The scene looked a little funny. A fat cat was sitting there arrogantly, and a man was talking to it seriously. Aman had been silent for too long, and no one could talk to him. He didn't know if Schrödinger understood him, but it pointed its paw forward again. Its expression seemed arrogant and a little reserved. It was obviously referring to the pot of beef soup. Looking at the cat's expression, if it could speak, it was clearly in a commanding tone, "Hey, boy. Give me a bowl." Aman was almost amused by it. He didn't feel as scared as before. Although he knew that Schrödinger was a magical cat, it was too funny for a cat to act like this. He really couldn't help but want to laugh. He waved the spoon in his hand at Schrödinger and said, "I only have one spoon. When I'm full, I'll give you the pot." Schrödinger's tail suddenly stood up, and it slapped the ground as if it was very dissatisfied. It twisted its body and actually walked away. It slowly walked to the side of the backpack and lay down. Its eyes were open, and it was panting. It did not sleep. He only ate half of the pot of beef soup. When the other half was no longer hot, he put it in front of Schrödinger and whispered, "Kitty, you must be hungry. Let's eat." Schrödinger's eyes lit up when she heard that. But Schrödinger turned its head and closed its eyes. It didn't even want to look at it. Aman saw that the cat didn't eat and he wasn't very full. He couldn't waste the half pot of beef soup, so he ate it himself. After he finished eating, he waved his wand and a transparent mist swept past. Then, it turned into a turbid mist and flew out. The pot was clean. Schrödinger opened its eyes and glanced at him. It seemed a little surprised and a little mocking. If other mages saw Aman using such exquisite water element magic just to wash the pot, they would be shocked and even vomit blood. This was the work of humble servants. How could a noble mage use holy magic to do it? Moreover, the power of magic should not be used in this way. How could it be wasted on such a boring thing in such a dangerous environment? Since Schrödinger didn't want to eat, Aman couldn't do anything about it. He found some dry, soft grass and spread it on the ground. He sat down with an iron stick in his hand and closed his eyes to meditate on the air element magic Crazy Ol had taught him. He had just finished meditating on the simplest air elemental summoning chant in his mind, but before he could even try it, he heard an angry meow. It was Schrödinger. The cat that hadn't meowed for 30 years actually meowed today. It sounded like a low growl. Aman, who was practicing magic, was interrupted. He turned around and found Schrödinger lying on the ground with its head on its two front paws. It turned its head and stared at him. Schrödinger's eyes were very strange. It reminded Aman of the way the mayor looked at all the townspeople in front of the shrine. What did Schrödinger want to do? It clearly wanted to eat just now, but it didn't eat when Aman handed it to it. When Aman finished the whole pot of beef soup, it was unhappy again. Anyway, there was nothing else to do. Aman sat there thinking about the cat. Suddenly, he remembered an unforgettable experience. During the 3 days when he was a servant of Maria, the food he ate was the best he had ever eaten in his life. However, when Maria finished eating, she said, "Aman, these are for you." Then Aman took the table downstairs to the kitchen to eat. Anyway, there was a lot of food prepared for Maria. She could only finish half of it at most. Also, Maria had a habit of leaving 2 plates of food untouched for every meal, as if she deliberately left them for Aman. Thinking of Maria, Aman looked at Schrödinger again. He thought to himself, it seems that Maria deliberately left 2 whole plates of food for me, knowing that I would eat her leftovers. But if the situation was reversed, of course, she would not eat my leftovers, nor would she eat with me. Does this cat think he is so noble? After thinking for a long time, Aman finally sighed and decided not to argue with the cat. Crazy Ole said that it might be the only guide that could lead him to Bear's whereabouts. And in this long and lonely journey, Schrödinger was his only companion. Let's try and see if the cat meant it. Smart as Aman was, he guessed it right. He cooked a pot of fragrant beef soup and put it in front of Schrödinger. Then he sat down and began to meditate, using the power bestowed by God to communicate with the air around him. He tried to summon and control the air element. The first step required a gust of wind. His staff was socketed with the aquaticore, the ventusolve, and 2 standard parangons. Soon, he summoned a gust of wind and made it swirl in front of him. Then he controlled the wind to blow the bonfire into various shapes. It was a fun game. After playing for a long time, he remembered the next step of the air element magic. He waved his staff and created a transparent wind blade in the air, leaving a shallow mark on the ashes of the bonfire. He felt a little tired and decided to take a rest. He added enough firewood to the bonfire. When he looked back, Schrödinger had finished the pot of beef soup and was sleeping soundly in his bag. Only half of his head could be seen. How could this fat cat eat and drink so much? Chapter 24. It had been 3 days since Aman walked through the forest. Every time he rested, he would practice air magic according to Crazy Ole's instructions. With the experience of water magic and the help of the staff, Aman mastered the low-level air magic very quickly. Then he no longer used the staff to practice. It was much more difficult to practice with his own divine power. Schrödinger never walked alone. When Aman was in a hurry, it slept soundly in the leather bag. Every day, it only ate 1 meal in the evening, but it had to be specially cooked by Aman. Aman knew the cat's temper well, so he let it eat first, and then himself. Schrödinger seemed to be very satisfied. The deeper they went into the mountains, the more humid the air became. Although the change was very faint along the way, Aman, who was proficient in various low-level water elemental magic and practicing air elemental magic, was still keenly aware of it. To the north of Duk was the Saya Plateau, which was majestic and dangerous and very desolate. To the east, there were also steep mountains, but the vegetation was very dense. To the southwest, there were relatively low plains. The wind blowing from the ocean in the southwest directly passed through the plains. There was very little precipitation, so the dry Saya Desert formed to the south of the town. The sea wind met with the mountains in the northeast and formed convection, so there was a lot of rain and formed the Euphrates River. The terrain in the mountains was not suitable for people to live in, and the charcoal forest and the Saya Desert were not suitable for building towns. Duk happened to be on the edge of the transition zone, at the foot of the mountains in the southeast. There were streams for drinking, so it was not too dry, but the land was quite barren. As Aman walked east, the terrain became higher and higher. It was the zone where the sea wind was blocked and formed convection. Aman, who rarely saw rain in his life, encountered several consecutive rains. Sometimes the rain was like flying silk, flying into people's collars with the wind. Sometimes the rain was so heavy that it was hard to see around, and the feet were unusually slippery. It was very dangerous to walk in this kind of wilderness in the rain. Not only was there no path, but if one was not careful, they could slip off the cliff and not even their bones could be found. Normally, Aman should stop and wait for the rain to stop. However, the rain was intermittent, so Aman had no choice but to continue in the rain. Schrödinger, on the other hand, sneezed whenever it rained. It didn't seem like he had a cold, but he didn't seem to like it. Aman did not want to risk his life, but he had another way. Every time it started to drizzle, he would use his staff. The light rain swirled and drifted away with the wind, and the heavy rain condensed into a curtain of water that sprinkled around. Aman's body was still dry, and he could see the path under his feet clearly. If other mages saw Aman using water and air magic at the same time just to walk in the rain, they would probably vomit blood again. Was it really necessary for a noble mage to walk so hard in the rain? Even if he had to go out in the rain, he could sit in a comfortable caravan. If he couldn't sit in a caravan, he could wear a waterproof cloak and boots, and let a strong servant accompany him with a big umbrella. The power of magic would run out, and it would take time to recover. It was the same as the physical strength of an ordinary person, and it was much more exhausting than physical labor. Noble mages did not torture themselves like this. If they knew what kind of staff Aman was using, they would not only vomit blood, they might even faint. Aman relied on this staff to walk through the mountains in the rain and use two kinds of magic at the same time. At first, he did not regard it as a kind of practice. He only used it to avoid the rain, because Crazy Ol had told him not to use special parangons during his practice. He did not summon the water and the wind, but the power of nature. Crazy Ol's words came to Aman's mind: when you practice these two elemental magic, don't try to reach the highest level. You need to pay attention to how to resist, use and protect yourself in the face of nature. If you can control a drop of water, you must learn how to keep it in the river. Aman seemed to have found another way to practice magic, not to summon the wind and the rain, but to face the power of the wind and the rain, and to adapt to it with magic so that he would not get wet. Thanks to the staff, he could practice like this. Aman walked alone in the mountains for 3 days and 3 nights, leaning on a heavy staff and carrying a lazy fat cat on his back. When it rained, he cast 2 kinds of magic at the same time to avoid the wind and rain. It was a great challenge to his physical strength, energy, and magic. It was more difficult than any march on the continent. Although his body was dry, in the slippery and muddy mountains, sometimes he needed to climb rocks, and sometimes he needed to slash out a path with a knife. The coordination requirements for strength, agility, and endurance were quite high. This was actually the best kind of physical training, but it was not a combat technique on the battlefield. Along the way, they met several fierce beasts in the mountains. Aman finally realized that he was not the one to be afraid of. He waved the staff a few times and the seemingly fierce beasts were all scared away. Aman did not hunt or chase. He remembered Crazy Ol's words and walked eastward for 3 days. He came to a high slope and looked around. Then he frowned and hesitated. Crazy Ol wanted him to climb the highest mountain he could see in 3 days. Obviously, there were 2 mountains, one on the left and the other on the right. He saw them yesterday, and he estimated that they would be the highest mountains he would see in 2 days. But he could not tell which one was higher because of the angle. When he looked up, he could only see misty clouds covering the top. On the right was a steep mountain with jagged rocks and cliffs. It seemed to be higher, but it was difficult for Aman to climb it. The mountain on the right was magnificent, with continuous undulations. It was not a mountain, but a plateau. Which way should he go? When Aman was hesitating, Schrödinger suddenly stretched and jumped out of the bag. It ran down the slope on the right with small steps. The lazy cat walked on its own. Aman hurried to catch up, but he almost slipped. The ground was covered with wet moss, and it was almost impossible to stand on it. He ran and shouted, "Schrödinger, where are you going?" The cat didn't run far. When it reached a valley, it stopped, raised its front paw, pointed upwards, and meowed softly. Amon looked in the direction the cat was pointing. It was a narrow path between the trees, winding up the mountain. Obviously, Schrödinger wanted to show the way, but Amon was surprised that there was a path in the mountain. Amon found footprints. Someone passed by here a few days ago. The footprints were wide and thick, without shoes. It should be a caveman. This path might lead to a large caveman tribe. Amon had been trying to avoid encountering cavemen along the way, but Schrödinger asked him to go in this direction. Amon could not negotiate with the cat. He carefully studied the footprints nearby and found 2 lines of footprints with shoes. One set of footprints belonged to a pair of sandals woven from mountain grass, with a slightly coarse pattern woven very closely together. The other person was actually wearing a pair of boots with a leather sole and teeth. This kind of boots was waterproof and non-slip, very suitable for walking on mountain roads, but only people of high status could afford it. Judging from the footprints, the teeth on the boots had been worn down, indicating that this was an old pair of boots. This line of footprints looked new. This person probably walked here less than a day ago. Could it be that there were other people here besides cavemen? This was deep in the mountains, far away from towns and people. Schrödinger, are we really going to go this way? There seems to be a caveman tribe on this mountain, and there are footprints of someone who just passed by. It's very strange. If we encounter them, what kind of trouble will there be? Amon said to the cat in a negotiating tone. Schrödinger twisted its neck and looked back at Amon. Its expression seemed to be despising a useless coward, and then it squatted there and looked at the mountain road. Amon understood that Schrödinger wanted him to climb this mountain, so he picked up Schrödinger and put it in his leather bag. Then he walked towards the mountain on the right, leaning on his cane. When he picked up Schrödinger, Amon had a feeling that this lazy and greedy fat cat had become a little thinner after 3 days of good food and drinks. Its fur had also become clean, not as dirty as before. When it jumped out of the bag, it still had some of the strength and flexibility that a cat should have. Just as Amon was climbing along the trail, a group of distinguished people came to the town of Duk. Distinguished people from faraway places rarely came to Duk, which was a difficult and harsh mining area, but recently it was very lively. Less than 3 months after Roderick's departure, the governor of Saya, Firmian Schmull, also came. The post road through the charcoal forest could only accommodate single-shaft carriages. When Schmull passed by in his luxurious double-shaft carriage, all other people and carriages had to dodge into the bushes on the side of the road to avoid him. Riding in such a carriage on the official post road was definitely a symbol of status and identity. Ordinary people, no matter how rich they were, would not be allowed to ride in the post station. But this time, Schmull's carriage was the first one in the front. It was accompanied by Shog, the priest of Duk, and Morton, Schmull's assistant. In the second carriage was Miser Randall, an envoy from the Hittite kingdom. He was an official of the Ministry of Justice of the Hittite kingdom and also a 5th-level mage. He was not a big shot in the capital, but as a special envoy to Saya, he was very noble. Along the way, the local officials had to treat him with great care. The last carriage was spacious and comfortable. It was made of the best snow cedar wood, but it was not decorated too much. The roof was plain and there was only a symbol of the shrine of Enlil. It was Goliath's carriage. Cosman, the high priest, sat in the carriage with Goliath. There were also cavalry guards in front and behind the caravan. Such a procession had never been seen on the post road in the charcoal forest. Randall was very proud, even a little smug, as if he was a dragon returning to the sea. As an imperial envoy of the capital, his status was indeed extraordinary. He had only come to Duk to punish a miner, but he did not expect that the supreme mage Goliath would come with him. Who else could have such an entourage? As soon as Goliath arrived, Schmull, the governor of Saya, also came with him. Everyone seemed to be serving him alone. Although the charcoal forest was strange and desolate, Randall was overjoyed. Shog, who was sitting in the first car, was also overjoyed. The priest's illness had been completely cured. He looked even more energetic than usual, almost radiant. He had gained a lot from this trip to the city. He actually had the chance to curry favor with Lord Randall, who came from the capital. Although Randall spoke very arrogantly, he still chatted with him about the local customs and resources. He was especially interested in the god's stone, and he showed some appreciation for him. Most importantly, he asked about Lord Randall's intentions. He was here to punish Amon and behead the boy in public. Since Maki's disappearance, Shog could not eat or sleep in peace. Amon had become a thorn in his side, but he did not dare to provoke him again. Now, all his troubles were solved, and he did not need to do anything. Lord Randall indeed appreciated him, especially when Shog told him that Amon had an aquaticore in his hand. Randall's eyes lit up and he asked, "Shog, what do you think should be done with Amon's belongings?" The order from the capital was to behead Amon in public, not to confiscate his property. What property could a minor in a small town have to confiscate? The dignified Ministry of Justice of the kingdom would not think of this. He did not expect to hear such good news from Shog. Logically speaking, Amon's inheritance naturally belonged to his father. But Shog blinked his eyes and said, "I paid all the taxes for the parangons Amon got. These parangons should be confiscated by the shrine. Of course the aquaticore should be given to you, my lord. This is the will of the gods. It is up to you to punish him for his sins." Randall nodded in satisfaction. "Shog, you're just a priest and clerk of a small town. It's such a waste of your talent." That was what made Shog so excited that he couldn't sleep well the whole night. Mayor Dusty, who received the news, rang the bell of the shrine of Murin early in the morning. He gathered the townspeople and lined up on both sides of the road to the east of the town to welcome him. He sprinkled water and flower petals on the road. There were not enough fresh flowers around Duk in a hurry, so he sprinkled a lot of fresh leaves to decorate the flowers. It was also quite beautiful. Sitting in the governor's carriage, Shog felt a little lightheaded. He even felt that the townspeople and Mayor Dusty were welcoming him. When the lords and lords sat down in the council hall of the shrine, the maidservants served them wine and snacks. After listening to the flattery and compliments for a long time, Landier asked arrogantly, "Where is the miner named Amon in your town? Bring him to the gate of the shrine and gather all the townspeople. I want to punish him in public." Although he was in a good mood when he came, he could not stand the dirty and smoky environment of Duk. He was not as patient as Roderick. He wanted to leave as soon as he arrived. He just wanted to finish his job as soon as possible, get the benefits and go back to Saya to enjoy the wine, food and beauties prepared by Governor Schmull. He did not want to stay one more night in Duk. Hearing this, Dusty was stunned for a moment before he replied, "Amon? He left Duk 3 days ago. According to the decree of the kingdom, I sent him away in public." "What? The miner ran away? Shog told me about the law here. The miners of Duk are not allowed to leave without permission. What the hell is going on? Are you purposely making things difficult for me? I came here with the king's order." Randall's voice immediately rose by an octave. He looked a little flustered and exasperated. Shog's face darkened as well. In a moment of panic, he shouted at Dusty, "What the hell did you do? You let Amon run away." Dusty wondered if his clerk had taken the wrong medicine. He glared at him and said, "Shog, did you hear it wrong? I sent Amon away from Duk in accordance with the decree of the kingdom. He didn't run away on his own." Then he turned to Randall and said in a frightened tone, "My lord, I'm really sorry. I didn't know you were here for Amon. It's like this." Dusty recounted what happened 3 days ago and concluded, "Everyone in the town can testify, except for Shog who left his post due to illness. It's just a coincidence." Randall shouted, "Decree? What decree? How come I've never heard of it?" Dusty took out a sheepskin scroll and handed it to Randall respectfully. "This is the decree of the kingdom. Please have a look." Randall wasn't even born 30 years ago. Of course he hadn't heard of this decree. He stared at it for a long time and asked, "Whose bear?" "Ah, the evil archmagician bear." Goliath suddenly reached out and took the sheepskin scroll. He nodded and said, "Yes, this is indeed the decree. I personally sent it here 30 years ago. At that time, I was just a priest of the Saya shrine. Dusty's father was the mayor of this town." Governor Schmull asked curiously, "May I have a look at this decree, my dear supreme mage?" Goliath threw the sheepskin scroll to him and said, "Don't you believe me? Go back and ask your clerk to check the archives. There's a copy of this." Schmull also looked at it for a long time and finally asked the most important question, "Dusty, can you tell me why you suddenly implemented a decree that no one has paid attention to for 30 years? Chapter 25. Everyone looked at Dusty. Shog discontentedly interjected, "You did this on purpose to let him go before Lord Randall arrives." Before Dusty could answer, Goliath suddenly said to Schmull, "Governor, this decree is still in effect, right? No one should be blamed for faithfully carrying out the decree of the kingdom, and a clerk should never reprimand his own chief officer like this." Schmull had been in charge of politics in Saya for many years. Of course, he was a shrewd official. He immediately understood that Goliath wanted to defend Dusty. As the governor and high priest of the shrine in Saya, Schmull would rather offend 10 Randalls than 1 Goliath. Moreover, his position was 1 level higher than Randall's. He flattered Randall only because he was the emissary of the capital. These days, looking at Randall's smug face, Schmull had long been displeased. Now, seeing that Goliath was reprimanding Shog and also Randall, Schmull was eager to take advantage of the situation. He quickly nodded and said, "Yes, this decree is completely legal and effective. I didn't say that Mayor Dusty should not have done this. I just asked him why. This is surprising after all." Dusty bowed and explained, "Actually, it's like this. I'm looking for an excuse to punish him on. Not long ago, I heard from a merchant from Igut that a new adoratress named Maria appeared in the temple of Isis in Igut. She received the god's tear from a miner in Duk. More than 2 months ago, the governor of the Cape States, Rod Drick, did come here with a girl named Maria. I thought he was just doing business. I didn't expect this to happen." Shog, the priest who presided over the affairs of the Temple of Horus and the Temple of Murin, did not know about it either. He was my clerk, so there was no record of such a parangan being produced in the town. My investigation revealed that Amon had extracted the god's tear and offered it to goddess Isis on the spot under his own name. The person who took the god's stone was Rod Dick's clerk, Judas. This kind of behavior could not be tolerated, but it was not an excuse to offend the Empire of Igut. In order to prevent something like this from happening again, he had to punish Amon to serve as a warning to everyone. So I thought of this decree from 30 years ago, ordering him to go deep into the mountains where cavemen lived to hunt down an evil magician, and ordering him not to return until he finds the magician. This was a form of exile. He could not return alive. As the mayor, I have no right to sentence a citizen to death, but I have the responsibility to share the burden of the kingdom. After thinking for a few nights, I finally came up with this solution. Lord Randall came to punish Amon. I am pleased and regretful at the same time. I am pleased that from the kingdom's point of view, he should be punished, but regretful that Lord Randall did not come 3 days earlier." When Dusty finished, Shog did not dare to speak anymore after being reprimanded. The others also noticed that the atmosphere was not right, so they did not speak first. Only Goliath nodded and said, "I see. What a good plan. Dusty is a competent officer. He knows how to share the burden of the kingdom. Lord Governor, Lord Randall, we should be happy to have such an excellent man under our rule, shouldn't we?" Governor Schmull, High Priest Kosman, and Financial Officer Morton all agreed in unison, "Yes, Mayor Dusty is loyal and competent." Randall was a little confused. He was the emissary who came to punish Amon. What would he do if Amon left? Would he be unable to complete his mission? He waved his hand and said, Goliath, don't be in such a hurry to praise the mayor of a village. How can I complete my mission? Goliath suddenly snorted. The wine glass in front of Randall shattered without a sound, and the bright red wine splashed onto his clothes. Randall jumped out of his chair in fright. He heard Goliath say coldly, You are so rude. How dare you call my name without any honorifics? Randall also came to his senses. The local officials had been very respectful to him along the way, so this minor official from the Ministry of Justice, who had left the capital for the first time, was a little carried away. Goliath was an 8th-level supreme mage and a member of the Council of Elders of the Academy of Magic in the Hittite Kingdom. His status was unparalleled. How could he scold him for no reason? If Goliath made a mountain out of a molehill and refused to let it go, he could even accuse him of disrespecting the gods through the Council of Elders of the Academy of Magic. The most serious consequence might be that he would be stripped of his title. Naturally, Goliath would not do something so frivolous and demeaning, but Randall was frightened by his own thoughts. He immediately bowed and said, Dear Supreme Mage, I am very sorry. I hope you can forgive my rudeness. I was just in a moment of panic, thinking that I could not complete my mission. That's why I spoke without thinking. Goliath's expression softened, but he did not let Randall sit down. He said slowly, It's not impossible for you to complete your mission. Let Governor Shmuel borrow a guard to escort you into the mountains at the border of Assur and Babylon. When you find Ammon and punish him, you can return to the capital to report. I can be your witness and bring the news back to the Ministry of Justice. Send someone to inform your superiors and family, so that they don't worry. Shmuel and the others wanted to laugh in their hearts, but they had to hold back. A guy like Randall who regarded others' modesty and politeness as his own prestige was indeed abominable, but they could not say anything due to their status. But Goliath was a supreme mage who had no need to curry favor with Randall. If he really wanted to, wouldn't it be easy to get rid of him? Even the head of the Ministry of Justice would not offend Goliath because of Randall. Randall looked like he was about to cry. He knelt before Goliath and said, Respected Supreme Mage, do you have any other orders? Goliath smiled and reached out to help him up. Actually, it's easy to do. There are 2 ways. The first is to give Governor Shmuel an order to send someone to bring Ammon to you, and you can wait in Saya. However, this method may not be very effective. Ammon has most likely been eaten by wild beasts in the mountains. The second method is simple. You just have to report what happened here truthfully. Don't forget to praise Shmuel, Dusty, and the other local officials for how they truly shared the burden of the country. Ammon has already received the punishment he deserves. He is just a minor. The purpose of the king sending you as an envoy to punish him was only to warn the others. Now that this purpose has been completely achieved, no one will worry about anything else. Besides, with me here as a witness, it can be solved with a single word. I think the head of the Ministry of Justice saw that you are usually diligent, so he sent you out for a walk. Did you enjoy eating, drinking, and playing along the way? Randall's face turned red. He could not say yes or no, so he could only say submissively, Thank you, respected Supreme Mage. Thank you, my colleagues. Then let's do it. Ammon climbed all the way up. He felt that he was not climbing an isolated mountain, but walking on a plateau. The mountain road was not a straight upward path. It rose and fell, passing through many flat and open areas with lush primeval forests. The vegetation here was rich, the rainfall was good, and there were many wild animals. It was a place suitable for hunting and picking. No wonder there were tribes of cavemen. He leaned on the iron tree branch and remained vigilant. However, for a whole day, he did not find any trace of cavemen, only a few squirrels and wild goats. The mountain squirrels did not avoid people. They would even jump on high branches and look at you curiously, but if you walked too close, they would quickly burrow into the canopy and disappear. The wild goats were very timid. They ran far away when they heard the noise. They were very agile and could jump on steep rocks. Footprints could not always be found on the path. The climate in the mountains was very complicated. Sometimes it was cloudy or sunny just across the mountain ridge. Some places were so dry that footprints could not be left behind. The path itself was also intermittent. As the sky gradually darkened, Aman left the path and found a depression with his back against the stone wall. There was a small open space in front of him. This was his favorite terrain to camp in the mountains. He lit a campfire and made dinner for Schrödinger. Then he ate himself. He did not have much special meat floss with him. It was enough for him and Schrödinger for another 2 or 3 days. After that, he would have to hunt by himself. While camping, he realized one thing. According to Crazy Ol, a sorcerer who could use 2 low-level magic together was already qualified to be a second-level sorcerer. He wondered if Crazy Ol had left any useful information in the Terraculus. When it was dark, Aman moved his limbs in the open space. His movements were like gymnastics, but there was no fixed routine. It was a habit he had developed after years of bathing in the cold spring. As the heat rose and spread in his body, he stretched his muscles and bones. He could get the most relaxation and eliminate the fatigue of the day. Strangely enough, even if he did not bathe in the cold spring, he would feel warm and comfortable when he exercised like this every day. Then Aman inserted his staff into the ground in front of him. He spread the clean grass on the ground and sat quietly to meditate. The so-called power bestowed by the gods was more often called magic power. In the state of meditation, one could use magic power to communicate with the outside world. Mages might be good at different magic, but as the most basic skill, the state of meditation was the same for all mages. Mages of different levels could achieve different states. Aman did not know message magic yet. Message magic and detection magic were both advanced magic. Being able to use one advanced magic independently was also one of the criteria for a third-level mage. But Crazy Ol had sealed the message in the Terraculus with message magic. As long as Aman reached a certain stage, he would naturally see the message. Aman entered the state of meditation and used his magic to touch and summon the Terraculus. As expected, a message came into his mind: "You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."